Architecture Review and Historic Preservation. Joining me, we have fellow board members Jeff Broadleaf, Susan Stevenson, Jane Clare, and tonight we have Kathy Buxton as a board member. Therefore, we have quorum, so motion to open the March 11th meeting of the Southampton Village Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Also joining us tonight, we have Alex Wallach, our planning director, Alex Cooley, our counsel. In the back, we have Jackie Allen, our recording secretary, and Sage Certain doing all things videography. So with that, I think we're ready to go. Okay, so the first thing we have on the agenda tonight is approval of the minutes from February 26th. Did everyone get a copy of the minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Did everyone have a chance to read them? And
Yep.
are there any questions or comments?
No.
Okay, so motion to approve the minutes from February 26th. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next on the agenda is the written decision for 256 North Main Street to amend a prior ARB decision to construct an accessory pool house with a detached pergola, driveway gates, and a modification above the door entry. Did you all receive the written decision?
Yes.
Did you all have a chance to read it?
Yes.
Yep.
Any questions or comments? Motion to accept the written decision to approve the plans for 256 North Main Street. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next on the agenda is 64 Pulaski Street, but I do not believe that written decision is ready yet. Is that correct? Okay. And then we have a slew of adjournment requests. So a motion to accept the adjournment requests for 383 First Neck Lane LLC to March 25th, 92 Little Plains LLC at 92 Little Plains to March 25th, Wells Fargo at 111 Main Street, also known as 25 Nugent Street, to March 25th, Southampton Shopping Center LLC at 111 Main Street to March 25th, 300 North Main Street LLC to April 8th, 242 South Main Street to April 8th, and 121 Elm Street to March 25th.
No.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, so first thing up, I have a question. Who's here for Hill Street? Who's here for the theater? You have us up for a signage and for alterations to the building. Do you mind if we just do that all at the same time rather than break them to two? Okay, so I'm going to move ahead then to the next, which is a demolition evaluation for 70 Layton Avenue. Hello.
Hello, Sean Leonard. I'm the architect for.
Hello, Mr. Leonard. Two favors.
Yes.
Get as close to that mic as you can. It might be easier to sit down, actually,
Okay.
so they can hear you. And please just restate your name so she can hear you in the back. Perfect.
Sean Leonard. I'm the architect for the owners of 70 Layton Street.
Okay.
How are you?
Good. Okay. As I understand it right now, what's in front of us is a request and an application for a demo permit for the property.
That is correct.
Okay.
The reason for that is one of the things that they would like to do is they would like the demo, but also rebuild the house in kind.
Okay.
So we're not looking to rebuild like a different type of a looking structure on the property.
Okay. Because of the age of the house, the one thing that we're going to do is request a historic report for their house and a demo analysis by Zach, our village historian, which I believe was put in today, Alex?
That's correct.
That's right. So anything you'd like to tell us about the house, please feel free. But we won't actually rule on the demo request until such time as we receive the historic
I
report.
understand.
Okay.
The reason for the request and the reason why they want to rebuild the house in kind is we've had some testing done and typical stuff, lead paint. There's asbestos in the building because of its age and all of that. That would be things you would expect. There is mold in the building as well. And the owner of the property has a lot of allergies and things, very, very receptive to that type of things. So the thought was if we could rebuild the house in kind, we can actually take care of all of those issues and then be able to actually have a new fresh house that could be well ventilated and a little more energy efficient and everything else.
Okay. It's an interesting block because it's one of the few blocks where it's also a big cluster of houses, most of which are still sort of mostly original and intact in that block. So we would applaud that. If this house were in the historic district, that would be a requirement as part of it, but it's not in the historic district, so it's not a requirement. But it's a nice thing for us to hear. So I think in order for us to move forward, though, we are going to have to wait until we've got the historic analysis.
Okay.
And we should have that, I would think, by next meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
And I just wanted to clarify, we currently don't have an application for the reconstruction of this house in kind.
No, not at the moment, because I wanted to meet with the board and I wanted to
Sure.
kind of get some feedback from you and some of your thoughts and things before we actually started going into that process.
Okay.
Because if we weren't going to go in that direction, then we'd find another.
No, actually, I think, and I'll throw out the board members of my opinion, not the board opinion. My opinion is when you are on that stretch of the block between Layton, on the stretch of Layton heading west, there's a whole cluster of houses that are in original condition. So one of the things that makes it, it's sort of typical construction, the period, so the idea to maintain sort of the historical look of that, I think would be celebrated if we were to allow it to be torn down. But that's my opinion. If anybody else has an opinion.
I agree. I concur.
And
So-
we usually do like to see if we can restore before we tear down.
I understand. It just that seems to be an awful lot with this structure as we've gone through, because what would only thing that be left by the time we're done is the framing of the house. The shingles will be replaced. There's so much stuff that needs to get redone, and that's when the owner's like, well, "What's left?" And he's like, maybe we should.
But how,
Historic windows opening, historic material, that's what's left.
We still want to keep to the historic look of the house where it is. It's a 2/2, the windows and things like that, and we would be going back into that same look.
the owners have let it get to this point?
No, actually, they just purchased it.
okay.
It had been neglected for some time prior to. It's been sitting there for a long
Okay,
time.
thank you.
Yeah, you
Yes.
can see that when you walk around the house.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, no.
Do we know what year the house was built?
I do not know the exact year the house was built.
I'm not going to say the real estate listing, the probably historically inaccurate real estate listing as they go says it was circa 1895 to 1920. So
That's right.
it's about
Yeah.
So
It's like
that period of
That's
time is probably right for that block in that house though, because it's closer to Elm Street, so that would put it
That
in
is
that
correct.
period. So
Yes.
all right, so I think the best action here is to adjourn until next week, and we'll get the report and we'll get it to you ahead of the meeting.
Great.
And thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a
Appreciate
good
it.
evening.
So motion to accept the applicant request for an adjournment for 70 Layton Avenue for a demolition of existing dwelling until March 25th. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next up, 36 Main Street for exterior alterations. You've missed us.
He doesn't.
You're getting to be a regular.
Oh, he brought these pieces, right?
As requested.
As requested.
I thought my file box was heavy.
Right.
Evening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board, John Laffey, architect. Last time we were here, we had, I think, fairly established that we were happy with where the design had gone. And the question was do we want to retain this is the new shingle. This is a GAF fiber cement shingle. It's a 10.5 inch exposure, and it matches the shingles that are currently on the building. It was the wave on it, and it was designed to replicate asbestos shingles that are currently on the house. And then the last comment was maybe potentially we don't want it. We'd like to see what it might look like with a board of these are pre-dipped white 5.5 exposure shingles. They're from Maybach, and they're very consistent. Both of these are the same Sherwin Williams Ultra Light, which both this is how they come. And I painted this color so that they're exactly the same. And it's pretty close to the color that's actually on the building itself right now. It's probably a little brighter because the building's that's kind of beat up.
Yeah. It's had some sun exposure.
Yeah.
Okay. And is that an actual wood product?
No.
This is a wood product.
Oh.
It comes pre-dipped, so it's stained on, it's pre-dipped on all 8 sides of the shingle. And this is how you exactly you'd see. It's very consistent. It's not a red shingle, it's a cedar shingle. We've had a lot of success with these, and a lot of homes that we've done really wear nicely with them. And again, this is your, this is a 10.5-inch exposure, which matches the building right now. In a traditional shingle style, a shingle would have been typically 5.5 inches, unless you want to go with, I know we want to do a sort of a simpler shingle, so I kept with this.
Okay. If you had, just so we're clear, if you had your druthers, which one would you be choosing? Okay. Board members' opinions.
We'll just say there's a number of white, like the Compass Building I know has white shingles on
Yeah.
it. There's a number of shingle buildings throughout the Main Street, Job's Lane, and South Main. And some of them are stained, some are not stained. But there are at least 3 or 4 buildings that have decidedly white shingles on them. So it wouldn't be setting a precedent per se. It's just mine. I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Okay. Board members.
It seems to me that we would prefer the wood over something that is prefab to make it look like asbestos. Because why are we trying to imitate asbestos? So that's just my take on it.
Jeff?
The shingles seem to be a richer look. I'm not sure which is historically accurate.
I think the
Well, that's the
question
problem.
that was debated was when we looked at it and we're trying to maintain the historic accuracy because it was asbestos shingle. The
Yeah.
shingle to our right, audience left, is probably more in tune to match the
But
existing.
do
The left is more typical of what we've seen in Southampton near that period and today.
Mhm.
That's probably more historically accurate. It is a LEED certified building material because I did look that up, but is in fact it's an artificial material.
Right.
So
Right.
do we know, but were the asbestos the original ones? I would find that hard to believe, right? What's the timing of asbestos shingles?
The building was built in the 20s, the 30s.
No, it's before then because the bank went in
1912.
Because
We know.
because one of the things in weeks of looking for historic pictures of this house,
Yeah.
we know that we couldn't find much.
Right.
Right.
No, I remember
So
that.
the one thing that the architect had actually found for us is I think there was some existing shingle between the buildings.
Yes.
And that was that's probably heading north between this building and what is now the Masonic Lodge.
Temple, yeah.
Yeah.
That little
So
area.
in that area between the two of them, he'd found the original, which seemed to indicate
Yeah.
that it may have been asbestos. That's what we know today.
Well, what do we think?
Yeah.
I don't think
That
that's,
was in that little alley.
Yeah,
that
they're really
narrow
tiny little,
foot
yeah, there's some of these.
space or whatever,
Yeah.
I think it was called Bank Street once, even the little alley. So what do we think about, I mean, what kind of accuracy are we going for here? I like the shingles, don't get me wrong.
Okay.
I just don't want to be, quote, barking up the wrong tree if it's, but asbestos shingles that's not really that interesting to most historians.
No, and I wonder if,
Sorry.
if at the time they chose to use asbestos shingles because it was a construction or
Yeah.
contractor's cheap alternative.
Yeah.
And so why should we choose to replicate
A bad
perhaps
thing?
right?
Well, sometimes. I'm not against it. I'd go with the shingles
Yeah.
if it's not a.
Alex, for
Error.
clarification, we were looking at a bunch of maps. We were trying to figure out that at one point this street didn't go through and there was another building between these two. That's what we were trying to determine. We were actually, and it kind of looks like in some old historic overhead shots, but we're never actually sure if there was actually another building that was taken around to bring the road all the way to is that correct?
You're talking about the road that's now is at Wall Street?
That's now
there?
Wall Street.
Right. So that Wall Street was broken through after this building was constructed. There was a building. I think that building this may still be there to the south of Wall Street. I don't know if it was clipped back or if it was if that building was replaced. But at one point there was no street there, and there was just an adjoining building.
There was another building between where this building is now and where, which is probably why the update was done to the building that's now San Ambrose, because that facade would have been up against another building in 1910. Kathy, opinion?
I agree with Susan. I mean, I like the shingles better, but, you know,
I just looked up asbestos, and it didn't start mass production until 1929. It's
Okay.
been around for longer, but in the United States, mass produced started in 1929, so I think it's,
So that's a good fact.
Okay.
So, might it not be if there was a building that abutted it, then when they took that building down,
They reshingled.
they simply put in whatever they had, what was ever available, and perhaps if it was a freestanding building, then they might done what John is recommending, which is the shingles, which we all seem to think is a better look.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Are there any comments from the public on this? I'm expecting a big no here.
I think you're getting one.
Okay. Here's what I think. I think that's, look, in all the work we did to try to find pictures, there weren't any. And after going to the Historic Society and everything else, but we are aware that there was a building between the two. So going on the theory that, that asbestos wasn't around to 1929, my opinion would be shingle would be more typical of what would have been used on the exterior of a building if it was meant to be exterior in that building. And I think it's accurate to the village. It may not be 100% accurate to the picture we see right now, but I think it's accurate to the village. It may be the right decision for this building, and it's probably more accurate than a man-made structure. Although I'm not against a man-made structure, I just feel in this particular case that's probably a little more attractive. And we're at this point, we've done a good job at maintaining the window openings. We're maintaining within reason that fenestration, the original door height. I think this decision is probably right for the building and right for the village.
So
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
are we moving to a
Okay,
decision?
so, okay, Counselor. Motion to accept the proposal for 36 inclusive of the white shingle example presented on March the 11th in wood shingle painted white. Is that what you need?
And I'm sorry, which size did you want?
It would be the shingle versus, it'd be the wood shingle with a 5.5 inch exposure.
What's the actual, what do you call that thing?
This is a product that's called, the company that makes is called Maybach or
That's good.
Malbec. And
Can
they're
you spell that?
Mauback.
It's a real wood product that's pre-dipped.
It's pre-dipped, exactly
Yeah.
right.
Sort of has the benefit of being back primed.
I'm sorry, it's Maibec. I apologize.
Okay.
MAIBEC.
BEC, yep.
Is there a second?
So I'm not bringing that home with me.
Okay.
Why not?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
And
Thank
that's
you.
going to be reflected on the plans that the chair will sign?
I'll revise the plans and drop them off tomorrow.
Okay, that works, right?
Great.
Thank you.
But
Thanks, John. Still has to write the thing.
we're moving this to written decision because it's
Right.
an historic
It's
district.
in a historic district.
Right. So
Yeah, I got it.
okay.
All right.
So
he, sadly.
So 2 weeks from now we'll have the written decision. We'll approve. So we'll
I'll
look
get
at the updated plans
Perfect.
before I sign off on them. You'll miss us 2 weeks from now. I feel like you've been here a while.
So you don't have to come back, you just the village.
Thank you, my friend.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, next up is 700 Meadow Lane for exterior alterations to an existing dwelling. Before we start, Alex, can you recap the email we got today from Zach? Because I know we had him out for a historic, take a look at the house.
Yeah, let me just pull that up.
Request? No, he wasn't able to get on the property, I think. That's what it was.
Just wondering.
I believe he was looking for a elevation drawing that represents their intention to renovate the house with a stucco finish above a brick foundation. He said he noted the last rendering shows it as brick, but the annotation still says stone. So I think he was looking for that in order to complete his report. I think that's what my note says. I believe he had met with a Brian DeSessa and the builder at the site.
So Brian.
Okay, let's start. Please introduce
Yeah,
yourself.
Will, Manure Architect, 67 Hampton Road, Southampton, New York.
Okay.
Here for the applicant and the team to discuss what we presented since the meeting before.
Okay.
And to address comments, we did hear from Zach on Friday the discrepancy. I have new drawings printed. We can submit now. We can drop them off to the building department tomorrow. All intentions, though, is from the last version that you all saw until now, we are going back to the brick on the base of the building.
Okay.
And then Zach's report, I think, was really the open items we were waiting for. There's very other changes other than updating the plans and the renderings to reflect brick around the base from the prior submission.
That's correct. I think what we're waiting for, Zach, is any other notable historic of the element we should be taking into consideration in his research.
Correct.
Because I will say, he's right on your A5 drawing, it does say stone walls, but it points at brick, so it's just
Technicality, yeah.
It's
So I have
exactly-
updated drawings here. We can submit them for your file, or we can
Well,
submit them for the next meeting.
I'm going to want to hold it open because we're going to want to hear what Zach
Yeah.
has to say.
Yeah.
So we'll take your files, and I think what we should probably do is adjourn this until we get that report from Zach to get us where we need to be.
Yep, I do know he did meet Brian
I
Assess
will
on
tell you,
Monday.
one man's opinion is it looks better in brick
It does.
better and more appropriate in brick than it did before.
We all agree, yeah.
Okay. That's one man's opinion, not a board opinion. But okay, so
And
I
we all agree.
think the best answer then would be to adjourn this until we get Zach's report, and then we can handle all this at once.
Okay,
Is that fair? Okay.
that's fair enough.
And if you want to bring the digital plans and the hard copies to the building department tomorrow, we'll forward those to Zach and distribute them to the board members in advance of the next meeting.
Okay, I'll just bring this in tomorrow then.
Okay. Thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you.
Motion to accept the applicant request for an adjournment to March 25th for 700 Meadow Lane. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, 2 Gin Lane. Hello again.
Good evening, Brian Locascio with the Adam Miller Group, attorney for the applicant, and here with John Burson from Sawyer Burson, the architects for the project. As you know, we're before you at the last regular meeting requesting changes to the approved site plan. As a follow-up of that meeting, there were some questions as to the finish of the proposed storage shed, specifically replacing the proposed stone with shingles. So we have these proposed revised plans before you, and we can walk you through them and answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
Thank you again for hearing this application.
Of course.
I don't think I need to recap most of the last hearing. We understood the concern about the stone, especially the use of the walls. So we are proposing limiting its use to an 18-inch water table, and then the chimneys, which are 3 feet on their tallest elevation, and they're 2 foot by 3 foot in plan. I have here the scheme you saw with the stone the last time, and you can see the difference between these principal elevations where there were stone walls, now they're shingle, and likewise the side walls of the central mass are now shingle.
Okay. Board members.
Well, you know, I miss the funky stone, but it looks fine to me.
Yeah, I think it's more harmonious, not only with the environs, but to the house itself.
Kathy?
Yeah, I agree.
Agreed.
Sounds like you have agreement. Do I have any comments from the public?
Oh.
What?
Who was it?
It's me. I had my hand raised so I could join the Zoom.
Oh.
Sorry.
Alex.
It's not
So
just
glad you're
Alex.
here.
It's not just Alex, it's Alex.
In person and online.
That's right.
Great.
Okay, motion to move to written decision to approve the application as presented from drawings dated or submitted March 4th, 2024, removing the stone sidewall replaced with shingle for 2 Gin Lane for the, what are we calling, storage shed?
Storage
For
shed.
the storage shed. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Barry's not
Alright.
gonna come in.
I'm sorry?
Barry's not gonna come in.
Oh. Thank you.
Brian.
Okay, so we have a slew of adjournments.
Wow. Not very
Now that take
popular.
us to new matters historic. The first one is Hill Street Cinema LLC at 43 Hill Street. Do you have the affidavits and are they in order?
Yes and yes.
Great.
So wait, you're not saying the adjournments, or you already did?
We already did them.
Okay, all of them?
Yeah.
Zippy.
Although I didn't realize 121 Elm.
Right.
At the last minute.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
You had an updated agenda at about 4:45.
Oh, of course. What
Well,
were
they-
meetings you was having?
It came in very, very late in the
But to
day.
be, but to be
I
fair, they
totally
only,
missed
got the historic report, the historian's report
Okay.
today.
Fine.
Okay. Hello.
Hi, I'm Ed Parker, 1100 architect, here about 43 Hill Street
Great.
Theater.
And I know you're gonna love this. Can you just pull them out? These are directional. They don't pick up that well, so you can slide it toward you. That'll make it easier. Thank you.
Sure.
Big paperwork.
Actually, as long as it's aimed at you, it does.
And,
Is it working?
and while we
Yeah.
set this up, I'll remind the board that this is a landmark building that the board designated
Yes.
this as a local landmark.
It was we had this board landmark in 2023.
Correct. Yes. I believe it's the facade, the landmark, but
The landmark would be the exterior of the building. It's not just the facade, it's the full building, right?
Yeah, correct. So the landmarking applies to the property itself.
Yeah.
And then in issuing a certificate of appropriateness, the board would determine which elements are the most contributing to the landmark status and which may be altered.
okay. I thought it was just the facade, but that's fine. Cool. Let's go.
I'll pull it up and I'll check. How about that?
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm sure everybody's probably already aware the building has been purchased and is currently in a state of demolition and stabilization, let's say. That was, we applied probably 6-8 months ago to try to do that because the building, especially in the interior, there was mold, there were leaks, and there was a lot of disrepair on the outside of the building too. It shut down during COVID and then probably hadn't been maintained much before then. In any case, we were granted approval to do remedial demolition by the chief building inspector, including rehabilitation of the exterior. There's been scaffolding up. I don't know if folks maybe here have been following it closely.
Trust me, everyone's seen it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm sure. So, right. So, recently there have been windows replaced on the facade in kind to what was there previous. So it's kind of underway. We also have requested an approval to proceed with the renovation of the interior separately from that, which has been granted. So we have 2 permits in place basically. And then now we're coming to you to talk about the exterior of the building. And this, the reason we wanted to meet with you first is because there's a number of things that we think that you'll be interested in talking to us about. After which we need to go to planning. There's no site plan approved on file for this property. And we may or may not need to go to zoning depending on your perspective on some of the elements on the outside that would also be under their purview.
Okay.
So quickly to list them, and then I'm happy to jump into the detail. We want to talk to you about lighting on the outside of the building, signage, a secondary entry on the side of the building. I think those are the main points. And there's some vitrines on the front of the building that we're interested in installing. So it has to do with the look of the project. You probably are more familiar with its the history of the building than I am, but based on our reading of the landmark status of it and what we can find in the history, the building was one large theater built, I believe, in 1932 originally, and in the 90s, the majority of the back of the building was kind of severed off and rebuilt as a multiplex. So everything from about, I don't know, maybe 30 feet back is built in the 90s, essentially.
Well, it was a 1,000-seat
Yeah.
theater, so
I don't know that I have any knowledge that the back was torn off and rebuilt, but go ahead.
Yeah, so so the building from here back is not original. The construction of the interior is different, the structural system, the framing, everything. And it was one large auditorium. In fact,
Oh, I know it was one large auditorium. I just when we were doing the historic report to landmark the structure, I remember absolutely nothing about that report, that it was torn down to a facade and the entire back rebuilt. And if I look at the pictures,
Wasn't there a fire?
Well, I think I knew that was
all right,
fine alone.
I have no recollection of that, but go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I think
I know they ripped out the entire interior.
yeah, and I think originally I mean, it must have been amazing. There, one big bowl, but now even let's say it's all slab on grade and it's sloped within each theater. It's like I believe that there had been maybe basement spaces or something in the past, and none of that exists in those 4 spaces in the back of the building. That said, the plans that we've submitted for the interior renovation don't really change the configuration of the interior of it. Anyway, it's still 4 separate theaters. It's
Okay.
not, the intent is not to restore it to the original one theater
Okay.
space. And I haven't found any. I mean, some of these images you can start to see what's happening in the rear, and in fact, but I haven't found very good historic evidence of what the exterior of the building looked like, besides the front.
There are some pictures from the Grand. It was originally a different theater. It was an open air theater that, when it was originally constructed, and when it was opened as Glynn's Theater in 1932.
Mhm.
If you look at this picture, you can pretty much see the side, and the pilasters on the side and the brickwork on the side seem to reflect what's there today. And there's in the report that we had, not the landmark report, but were you able to find the historic report that we had done as a village in order to qualify as a landmark?
Alex,
building?
I believe that you sent me that information, and I have parsed all of it. There weren't a lot of drawings with it, or photographs of the exterior beyond the front.
No, you can see the front. They seem to be all shot from the west side, not the east side. Okay. I just think it's probably the better view. Okay.
That's not more fun.
No, I found it.
Thanks a lot for sharing.
Yeah, but the front is like brick load bearing, and the back there's steel structure with CMU infill and so forth. So I mean, I believe I may be incorrect, but I believe that the back part of the building is probably rebuilt in the 80s or the 90s. I'm not
Okay.
sure when. So if I move through, I guess this is the state of the building. Can you? Oh, okay. We're looking at this document. I'll flip, if you don't mind, I'll flip through some of the renderings that we presented to kind of talk about a few of these things.
Sure.
I don't know if you, where do I?
If you'll flip it facing the board.
Yep.
And then I'll move on.
In this location? Oh, okay. All right. So Ostensibly, I mean, and I think it probably, we could, the very old photographs are a little bit less easy to understand than the say more recent photographs. This has obviously through its lifespan had a number of different kind of minor adjustments to the front of the building. Most recently, I think the marquee has had like a yellow perimeter of lights around a white backlit black and white signage on the sides. Originally, some of the very old photographs, I mean, they've been colorized, or if they're in black and white, some of it shows like a black background with white lettering.
Yeah.
That was inverted at a certain point in time. I think if you look, when we look carefully at these very old photographs, we also found, it's not so easy to zoom in and see, but there was some kind of board signage at the pilasters near the entry that has subsequently been removed. That is something, as I mentioned before, vitrines that we are proposing potentially bringing back.
What they look like, they were poster boxes.
Exactly.
They were movie poster boxes.
That's correct. Yeah, so that's like a side lit movie poster box or something that could display,
Movie posters.
Movie posters or, event signage. I mean, graphically designed to talk about.
Do we know that they were lit?
No.
Doesn't seem to me they would be. Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely possible that they were not. That they were just
Brought out and put in the front.
either that, or maybe they were signs that had letters that could be replaced, kind of like the lettering that's on the side of the marquee. Although that's backlit, I don't know for sure that they are.
My
at the front.
biggest, I'm going to tell you, looking at the, we'll see if we can find other pictures of it, but my biggest guess is they were boxes to put up printed movie posters.
Mm-hmm.
The old ones.
Yes, and the old posters would have been on paper. They wouldn't have been on, like, they are now backlit, plastic signs. They would have been paper. So that's probably what they were, but that's what it looks like in these pictures.
Yeah, and the details that we submitted, we're proposing lighting them from the side, inside the vitrine, across the face of it, not backlit. So I don't know if there were lights in the old ones or not.
Yeah.
And
I find it hard. I don't know how they could light it. It's
yeah,
pretty primitive over there with old ones.
absolutely. It's definitely possible that there were not lights on them. I mean, another thing that I'll point out that is being proposed in these drawings is the potential to light the facade, which I don't think historically was lit.
It wasn't.
So it's a question as to whether or not there's interest or support for doing that. Some of the pictures that I saw one or two of the theater at night. It was quite dark all around the theater, except really at the marquee. There was a lot of contrast in those images.
When you went up on the roof of the first story there over what were the retail spaces, probably. Did you see any evidence of light fixtures that have been removed? Any evidence of wiring? Any evidence that lights had ever been there?
In here?
No.
Oh, outside?
Yeah.
No.
So you saw no evidence of that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would be a change to light the facade. I don't know if the board feels that is positive because it's lighting a historic building or not. We're not proposing uplighting elsewhere around the building. It's all downlighting. And it's also something that planning will be interested in talking about. There are dark sky compliance issues. I mean,
yeah.
Well, we also do dark skies over here.
Yeah.
Not planning.
Yeah, the lighting would come under the uplighting
dark
would come
skies.
under our purview.
Yeah, and
So
you have
Yeah.
the full lighting package too. Yeah. No, I
Right.
know that.
Okay.
And actually, I mean, as far as that goes, I think this is an idea that we have that we think might be nice for the building, but I'm interested in your opinion. The marquee itself, there may be some issues with that. And, in the past, some of the projects that we worked on, we've navigated the dark sky compliance by putting timers on lights and things of that nature, right? So different parts of the building might be lit at different moments in time.
Well, let's just keep going and put all your wishes out, and then we'll tackle them all at once. And
Sure. As we move around the building, there's a proposed kind of secondary entrance on the west side of the building that would
Wasn't that an exit door?
there are exit doors from all of the theaters directly to different parts around the building, because all of them need two means of
But in the main
egress.
hallway on the first floor, there was a big door that people went out and then went back to the
A
front.
double door, yeah. That.
I don't know, but it was that, I do remember that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's
But in this proposal, you're proposing cutting a new
Coming in that
door.
way?
This is a non-existing door and an existing door that you're proposing covering.
right. There is currently an existing egress door
Yep.
right here that you see from the street. Actually, would be in this location,
Yep.
and we're proposing essentially moving it back and around the side of the building and putting a canopy over it. In some of these pictures, I actually did also see. I go back, and this is more recent, so I don't know if it's historically relevant or not. But you can see a bit of a canopy here, which may have actually connected
That may have connected the building next door.
to the existing egress door that comes out of that theater. But there are egress doors at each theater, right? So like Theater 1 has an egress door that comes out here. Theater 2 has one here. Theater 3 has one here. Theater 4 has one here. And then there are double doors also that basically there's a corridor that goes down the middle that gets you to all of the theaters, and then it goes out
And
the
by
side.
law, I would think you'd have to have those.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely two means of egress from all the theaters.
Screaming fire in the movie theater thing?
Yes, exactly. Yes, they're all required. But this one, yes, we're proposing to relocate and put a canopy on so that, I mean, just to zoom out for a second, the ownership is currently going through the process of converting this to a nonprofit entity as a cultural center as much as a movie theater. I mean, the primary focus is to be a movie theater, but the idea is that there could be other kinds of community events and things that might take place. And adding an entry point here would allow for maybe like a simultaneous use where you don't necessarily want to have, I don't know, a community meeting in one part of the project where the other parts are still showing movies or something along those lines. So the idea is flexibility, essentially. Along those same lines, and this is probably outside of, maybe you're interested, maybe not, I don't know. Currently, all of the theaters have built-in rakes. As I was saying, it's all slab on grade. And in Theater 4, we've actually designed it to...
If this is interior, that doesn't come under our purview.
It is.
Yep.
Yeah. We're just...
You're flattening it.
Yeah. We're
Okay.
flattening it so that it could and it has removable seating so that it could also be used for a variety of activity. In any case, this is the entry point that we're proposing with a canopy for Theater 3. And the other thing that's obvious over here is there's an idea that maybe we could have banners for advertising things that might be happening in the cinema, which would be viewable depending on which one we're talking about from a range of distances. I think most of it's almost directly across the street, or when you're facing the theater, there's a small diagram here that kind of shows like the sight lines for all of those things.
Yeah.
So that's that. I think within this package, we are proposing to de-emphasize through color the back of the building. As I said, we see it as actually like a separate time structure, and the part of the building that we feel is important is the front part of it, where the roofs are different and so forth. So I think that may be the extent of the things that.
No, you have all sorts of lighting plan. You want to take down the existing sconce lighting, and you had recommendations for modern lighting that you wanted to put up.
Correct. Yes.
Could you take us through that, please?
Sure. Right, and I don't know. I think I can put it here. Again, I think that maybe we can try collectively to identify any lighting that was around the building previously. The existing decorative fixtures on the outside of the building, I believe are like relatively recent facsimiles of something that may seem old. And we are proposing very small contemporary light fixtures that are just downlights that wash the walking surface around the building. Oh, and I did not mention it specifically, but the areaway between this building and its neighbor, 53, the proposal for the hardscape is to include cobblestones and bike racks at the front of the property. Additionally, if we move into the back, we are proposing new light fixtures for the parking area, as they're essentially defunct. The coverage of them is for security essentially. And right now, there are no parking spots in the very rear of the parking lot, even though there is space for them, and we are proposing to add 20 lined spots in the back of the parking lot.
So that's, I don't think our purview either, is it?
I think it's part of the site plan, yeah, or maybe
Well, we're
zoning.
not site plan
That
approvers.
number of parking spaces,
That's
that'll
gonna be
take you to
dealt
the,
with
that'll take you to the
Planning
planning board.
board.
Yes,
immediately.
I will go to the planning board, I know.
Yeah, you have to.
Yes, I was interested in your
So it's
perspective
always
first.
sort
All
of
right.
dark getting to
All
the
right,
parking lot, I'll just say that.
Uh, if you just explain to me,
Especially on the roadside.
bike racks, oh, I see them, okay. All right. So what you're calling the sign application is what? What's your proposal to do to the marquee?
The marquee proposal is to let's see, list the name of the theater. The current naming consideration is Southampton Playhouse as a fixed sign on the front of the building and on the sides of the marquee. Continue to use them in the fashion that they have been most recently, where it is white backlit with block letters that would manually be replaced when show times and things were changing.
And what's your request for what that Southampton Playhouse sign, is there a light box below it?
This one here?
Yep. Or is it in the light box?
It's the same, yeah.
It's the,
Just like
No.
what, essentially, I mean, I think this is not here right now, but it was taken down before these photographs were taken, but I believe it said like, no
Okay.
United Artists Cinemas or something like that
Yeah, I think it did.
below Southampton.
So you're not proposing moving the great big Southampton.
No.
You're proposing to say Southampton, then Southampton Playhouse below it.
Yeah, and to be fair, I'm here for feedback.
Okay.
And, we were internally debating exactly that earlier today, and I
It's a
think
little
it would make
redundant for
more
the
sense
school,
just to say
redundant, but okay.
Playhouse underneath
Yeah.
Southampton.
The Southampton Playhouse.
Yeah.
Okay. Board members.
I would say definitely redundant with the sign, Southampton, that doesn't make sense to me. And then I'm just curious, are you making that Playhouse? It looks almost like the same font as what you're talking about would be the removable letters.
I think that, the question of font is outstanding. I don't think that they wouldn't be removable letters.
Not on either side?
On the sides, yes.
Yes, but in the front, if that's gonna be permanent, I would think you get rid of Southampton twice.
Fair.
And then Playhouse, I would think, would be in a different font than, it looks like it's the same font that is on the side.
I like conformity, but that's.
Well, I'm just saying, if it's
Not
gonna be
good.
called Southampton Playhouse, and then this is removable, you don't want this looking like removable.
Yeah, and I'll add there's a team of graphic design, a graphic design team that is engaged also, not in my office. I'm working on the architecture
Well,
primarily.
actually, yeah, so we'd like to see it including when you're putting like movie titles, Barbie, on the side. I don't think you need a million different fonts, that's all.
Yeah, I think one will probably end up the one on the front will probably end up being
Just
like the logo of
The
the
identifiers.
exactly of the
Right, so
nonprofit.
really, you're not really proposing that it look like this.
Yeah,
You're not proposing that it would say Southampton Playhouse in the front?
Yeah.
With that font?
Yes.
Yes,
I'm-
it is.
I'm suggesting that it's that it's in progress, but
Okay.
I assume that this will not be the last time that I see you, and I promise you the next time that I see you, it will be a
That's a good
proposal
assumption.
for
So, but
Okay.
a final version.
in the old photographs, I would be wanting to be more true. Let's see their font.
It's a little hard to tell.
Yeah, I mean, some of these, it depends on what age we're going
Yeah.
back to.
That-
Yeah, well, we need, that's right.
We wanted,
But I think if you go the whole way back to at least these colorized photos I've seen, it appears as though what's on the front is not fixed lettering.
No, it was those splitters you put up because you put a different movie up every week and you had the guy on the ladder putting the 6-inch signs and the two rails that went across
Yeah.
the front.
Right.
And in the beginning, the signs were black backgrounds with white letters
Yes.
because historically that's what that would have been. That's like every theater back then had
Right.
the guy that put the
But
letters
do
up.
we want,
And a big storm would come and one would blow off and you couldn't know the name of the movie. But
Yeah.
that's what it was. Yeah, but that's what it would have been then.
so are we, well, let's see what they present. But
Okay.
We're actually proposing to keep what has been there more recently
Yeah.
at this point in time, which
Yeah.
is basically a light box that has black letters on it,
Yeah.
and we're just proposing to replace the lights that are inside that light box.
Right, you were going to keep what's there and just change the from
Exactly.
you were going to LED, right?
Correct.
And what was the color temperature on that LED?
I think it's 2700.
Okay.
And then underneath with all those little bulbs, what happened to that?
All of them are meant to be relamped with
Okay,
also with
'cause that
LED
really
bulbs.
is- I mean, because
working
that
on
was that was part of the famous historic,
Yeah.
the last whatever it's
Well,
called.
this was actually the
Wow.
first of its kind when it became a model for movie theaters built across the entire
then-
country, which is
and
one of the
we kept
reasons
it.
why this is. We'll have to get you a copy of the full historic report that was done before we landmarked it, because there's a lot of good information in there.
I believe I did share that.
Yeah, I believe that I have read it, yeah.
Kathy?
So are we just discussing
No,
now
I'm
the
discuss-
marquee or the
discuss
banners too?
All
or-
of it. We're looking. We're giving feedback on everything right now.
Well, how does everyone else feel about the banners?
Can I make a note about that before?
Yeah.
I just want these, so the building department let the applicant know that the banners would need to go to the Board of Zoning
Right, the
Appeals.
banners aren't anything code compliant, are they?
Correct, but and which they indicated they would proceed with, but this application is starting here because it is a landmark
That's something
building.
that just from my opinion, that's something I would never support.
No, it reminds
Yeah.
me of when
Me
you're
too. Agreed.
you're driving west on the Sunrise Highway and those big two things. And it's,
Well,
it's
the
too bright
reason,
and too
Yeah.
big.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, I assume the reason they would have to go before the Board of Appeals because there's a section in the code that doesn't permit billboards, and the size, scale, and location of this is certainly one that it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It looks like a billboard.
Or flexible signage either.
Banner. It's a banner sign.
Okay, it's a banner. So Ed in his package noted some of the other ones, like at the Rogers Museum. To the extent that,
Right, we saw a lot of them. And,
well, I would say you're taking some poetic license there, Ed. But there are a few. Okay, I will grant you that.
Yes.
And the banners that you had, like on the VFW hall, that was all of about 4 feet by 3 feet. So we're talking about basically a ground to ceiling banner and 2 decoratively and lit up. So it's a very different thing. I'm not going to argue with you about that, but let's not go down that rabbit hole. Suffice it to say that I think just based on the preliminary comments, you would not get support for that. Now, that doesn't mean that as a village resident who's very appreciative of the work you're doing on the theater, would not from time to time, if you were holding a big event, a Southampton festival, that there might be, and I don't know the process, that, there's an application for temporary signage, but a permanent signage and this board granting that, I would not. I don't know whether that's the case or not, but
So there's no provision for a temporary sign in the village.
Mhm.
Some temporary signs are not permitted, so they would have to make an application to this board for this
For a
banner.
right, for a temporary sign,
And-
which is
and-
fine.
And if the
Okay,
board
let's-
wanted to
let's-
put an end date on it.
For the
Right.
purpose of this tonight, let's philosophically let's
Right.
comment about what we're looking at. Is this something we support? Do we think it's historically accurate? Because in this particular case, not only are they asking for signs, they're asking for tube lights across the front that illuminate them.
Well,
And the lights would be permanent.
Right, that's
So
the
which
other
is
thing.
different than temporary signage, which does not have permanent lighting. So
Right.
let's look at that one.
So
I will
that was,
note from
let me just finish my
let's go
thought
on,
because I lose them very quickly. In fact, I just lost it. No, the renderings, Ed, give the appearance that the outline of the building, the top, I don't know what you would call it. What's that? The pediment and everything looks like it's lit up. Now, maybe that's because it's highlighted from ground up lights and it looks that way, but it looks almost like there's a track lights across the pediment. So the question is, are there, or is it just
The lighting strategy that we are proposing on the outside is actually like at the roof level, pointed up, and also
proposing
at the
uplighting.
pediment,
Yeah.
pointed up.
Gotcha.
So a line of light that you would not be visible from below,
Right.
that would shine up the face of the building.
Gotcha. Okay. So again, my major concern was the banners, which I would not support, and then the lighting would have to be subtle and consistent with what way it looked in the past.
Jane?
Yeah, I would agree. The banners, I don't think go with our community whatsoever, and I would be hesitant about this lighting if it wasn't on a timer and turned off when the building was closed.
Absolutely. And I do think that maybe it's a point of nuance, but we had presumed that we would turn facade lighting off at a certain point in time, but probably put things on different circuits so that we could still have lighting below the marquee, again, for like security and.
Okay, so here's where I'm coming out on this. Let me go all the way around. I think, first of all, they're to be committed. Listen, bringing this thing back is important. Building really matters to Southampton, which is why we landmarked it. The site plan for the parking lot and trees and including the parking lot, though as a village resident, I tell you, I totally appreciate that's for the planning board.
Sure.
From the facade to the front, couple of things. The banners to me is just a no, because first of all, they don't shine sideways, they only shine front, and the idea that now suddenly this thing would glow when it doesn't glow right now is wrong. And I think we don't know what those banners would be, and the permanent lighting, downlighting banners, I also don't support, and they step back, and I don't think they're right for the village, and I don't think that kind of overlighting the size of the village makes sense, so I would not support that. Across the front, if there was an appetite to go back to the black, that'd be wonderful, but I mean, there may not be. But if you're going across the front to the signage across the front, because we are doing a nice restoration, we would just need to see a more accurate rendering of what signage you're proposing for your playhouse signage at the front.
Understood.
I have a request. When you look at the historic pictures, on the doors over to the east and west of the facade of the marquee, see these little doors?
Yes.
Now, each of them had an arch window that's over the door. That's not in your rendering, but it looks, when the pictures that I was doing, it looks like in probably the 60s, in one of these, a window air conditioning was stuck into that window.
Yes.
And it looks like they blocked the one over here. If in your restoration, you could actually go back to the original design to that half-round window that's over each of those doors and open that up, that'd be appreciated by the board, because that would give some more historic accuracy for the building.
Understood. Yeah, and it wasn't. I think that the contractor has been moving forward with trying to restore it in the fashion that they found it in, which doesn't have that. But that doesn't mean it's not something that
frankly,
we
I think they were both taken up for window air units at some point.
I think you're
But
probably.
if I look at the historic photographs, it was a nice detail that's now gone.
Fair.
I actually like the pilasters going around being painted white, so you get some contrast to the big brick that goes through there. I would like to ask. I'm going to go back through our report, and I may ask the historic consultant to find out what we can find about the lighting fixtures down their side to find out. I highly doubt they're original from this time period, but I'd like to know more about them before we agree to remove them. Your proposal to relocate an exterior door, because basically it looks like you're making smaller the door that's under what you mark as banner 2.
The door size is basically the same.
Because when I look at your rendering on page ARB 4.
Yes.
Can we get on the
Oh, that's,
street?
what,
we're talking about?
in ARB 4, you have removed the door, and what I'm looking at is not a door, that's where the bike rack is. So are you proposing closing off a door under banner
Thank you.
2?
Correct, moving it around the side,
Ooh, that-
exactly. So you
okay.
don't see it from the street anymore. Right now,
Okay.
those are all solid metal doors that are
Right.
definitely,
Well, what we would have to understand and do a little more research on is were those actually original historic openings or not, just so we know what we're dealing with. And they may not be, but I would want to know that.
okay.
Um,
Again, I believe that part of the building is all from like the 90s.
I know, but I don't know that I believe that yet, so I've got to do some research because I do not remember that coming up when we were looking at it. You may be right, but I don't ever remember that coming up. So we want to find out from our side. The idea that you'd put a permanent cover over a door because it doesn't attach to the building and makes it a separate entrance for what you want to do in the use of the building, from my perspective, doesn't seem problematic because it's not actually it's an additional structure, but it could be removed in the future. I'd have to know how other people feel about moving the door opening. So that's a lot. As far as the uplighting the building goes, what are your current plans across the facade? I think to the east was a ticket office, and to the right and to the west was a secondary. Are you incorporating that into your plan and those usable space? Are there bars, or is that part of your new interior plan for refreshment?
Yes,
So the entire front now would be lit when the theater's open.
probably, although I will say on the far east, that had been an office and it will remain as an office. However,
A theater office, not a rentable office.
Correct, a theater office. The office for the theater management. But most recently, at least as we found the building, there was like basically a solid wall about a foot in. So that was never lit, and that is being removed. So yes, the idea is that you can see into the building the whole way across, and that it would be lit. I think going across the building, ticketing still will happen at kiosks inside.
Yeah.
In the same location, ticketing used to happen. Entry point's the same, and then on the far west side, we are kind of capturing that space that used to be. It has been separated by a wall, and through history, I believe it's had a number of different stores and things in there. Depending on the pictures you look at, it was like a music shop or something else. Anyway, we are incorporating that into the concessions area as a place where there's some tables and chairs. But so it's an expansion of the concessions and a place to kind of meet people, I suppose.
And does your current interior plan include any access to the roof?
No.
Okay.
Let me couch that by saying there currently is access from the projection bridge, which is in the middle
But
of the building.
that's not public.
It's not
access.
public, and no, it's
Okay.
not intended to be public in the future.
Okay, so that would not become a public entertainment space,
No.
an outdoor space. Okay.
No.
All right.
Mark, can I make
So
one?
those
sorry.
are a lot of my comments.
Okay, I just want to make one comment. I wasn't quite clear that, and maybe you folks were, that on the marquee, I assumed that the lettering you had there that said Southampton Playhouse was just representational, and that was where you were going to be posting the events. What I realize is that you're saying that's a permanent sign, and instead you're asking us to approve these huge banners when you have a perfectly suitable and practical three-directional facade marquee that allows you to advertise your events front, side, east, and west. So we're
the east and the west would be for the events.
the east and the west events. Well, why not do the front? And so then
Is it better what?
eliminate the need for a banner. Anyway, I think the banners are crazy.
And here would be my other opinion on your uplighting question. This is, board, I'd like to hear your opinions on this. I don't know that I'm completely opposed to subtle uplighting the building, because we've seen it in some other historic structures. It's a nice facade that's recognizable. It would depend a lot on what the lumen level was and what the light color was, but a subtle, because when you come down, you do just see a great big lower lid, which is historic, and above it is a big black facade that sits above it. So that's, I don't know that I'm yes or no on that, if it were subtle. Just because I think when we look at what's been done to historic buildings, not just in Southampton, but in New York and a lot of other places, subtle lighting can enhance the
And it is a beautiful facade.
can enhance a beautiful facade as
Yeah.
long as
So I would
people
see-
really paying attention to the word subtle.
Yeah. I will also mention that
Is that possible, Alex?
What's that?
Is that possible?
Is what? I'm sorry.
Is it possible for uplighting to be dark skies compliant?
No, but I think on a historic building,
I'm
I
not
might
sure.
get a yes.
the marquee is
The answer is
also
yes.
not dark sky
It,
compliant.
it
I'll
requires
put that
hoods,
out.
it
It's
requires
historic.
Yes.
requires angles, hoods, and covers. And there's a maximum light, there's a maximum lumen number that they can
Yeah.
be, and a maximum number of fixtures per foot.
And a timer too.
But I would think the actual, the thing with the little lights, is that called the marquee? What's that, the ceiling that has all the lights?
The marquee.
The marquee. I would think that that would be considered historic, and we get a pass on the dark skies,
I
personally.
believe so too.
Well, the marquee shines down.
Agreed, but it's bright. I
Yeah.
mean, it
Oh,
doesn't
sorry.
meet the requirement.
Yeah.
It's not dark skies compliant.
Yeah.
But that is acceptable. Lighting a facade with uplights, I believe, is questionable, to say
I'm
the
just,
least.
I'm just saying for new lights, it would have to be dark skies
Right.
compliant.
It'd have to be
And
dark sky
I was
Well, there
compliant.
could be the
wondering-
fixed,
So they would have to do, they
Fixtures.
would have to do the research to find out what dark
Or,
sky
yeah, they might have-
lights
yeah.
look like, and then they would have to take it to planning. I'm just saying, as just a personal opinion, I'm not necessarily opposed to subtle uplighting if it's dark sky compliant, clearly, just because I think it's a pretty building. What I would be opposed to is anything bright and glaring that suddenly turned this into like a bright lit corner, which is not historically what it's been.
Yeah.
I
I'll,
have another question. Are you satisfied with Sally's report, or do you think Zach needs to look at this?
Well, I was thinking I might ask Zach to go look and update the construction history of the building, because that seems to be what's in question here.
Sally's report's pretty long.
It's pretty long. And I'm going to, I think before we do that, I'm going to, if you'll indulge me, I think I'm going to go back and reread the entire thing again.
Okay.
Because I don't know that I remember anything about the back of the building being torn down, but I am going to read it again.
The rest of us,
Yeah, I'd like
Please.
a copy of that.
may we?
Of
Alex?
Sally's report?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
You weren't on the board when it was.
I wasn't
yeah.
on, I was
Okay.
on a
I'll
different
send it
place.
to you.
So that's a lot of
Thanks,
feedback.
Alice.
That's a
Okay,
lot of
that would be-
feedback. I
That's
think-
probably
yeah.
really helpful. I just,
I think that
half of us haven't seen it, so we don't know, can't.
the controversial things that you're hearing are the things that I think you're hearing the most passionate about are the signage. What the signage looks like, what the font looks like, what this, the light levels and what's going on with the marquee. I think universally, people are universally opposed to anything that would be banners and signs that go up, those big long banners and signs and exterior lighting. There's a question about, we want to know a little bit more about the fixtures that are up on the side of the building before we just,
the existing fixture.
the existing fixtures, before we just make any agreement about what we think is correct for them.
Okay.
So now you have to go back to planning anyway, right?
I haven't gone to them yet. I wanted to see you all first.
Started here.
Okay.
I'll just mention one other thing, and then I'll.
And I hope you hear me about the arch windows over the doors.
Yes, I'm going to see what I can do about that. I was
Okay.
just there before I came over here, and I know they've already got part of it blocked out, but that doesn't mean that things can't be adjusted. So definitely noted. I was also just going to mention that the windows that are above the ground floor are spaces that are unoccupied now. Like the projector room used to be up here, and I'm not sure if these upper level windows were. I think they were actually part of the. I think there was a balcony in the original old theater.
There was,
Yeah.
there was.
Yeah, they're probably.
Yeah, because
restrooms.
there's still restrooms up there
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
go into.
Yeah.
But these windows also have been dark, and we propose to put lighting inside the building in those places so that there's also kind of a life to the upper
upper
level
floors
of the building.
That'd be great.
Okay.
People love the balcony.
Okay.
Me
Are there
included.
any
Oh,
comments? Are there any comments from the
Yeah.
public?
Excuse me?
I had a question before we
Yeah,
move.
sure.
That, you talked about going towards the direction of being a nonprofit.
Yes.
And if that was the case, would you be removing the 4 theaters? 'Cause to me, that would make the most sense, is that it would be one big open space again. Or you would continue to have the 4.
The plan is to keep the 4 theaters and to run it primarily as a movie theater.
It's like safe harbor. They have space.
No, I understand that, but I just heard mention of a nonprofit, and when
Yeah.
I hear that, I just thought
It's
maybe.
not our purview, is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
I
just
think that-
curious.
No, it's a good question. What I heard is one of the theaters is going to be flat seating with chairs
Right.
to be removed. So one of the
Yes,
rooms is multi-purpose, and the others are still raked theater rooms, if I'm correct.
But we'll stick
Correct.
to our purview.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, we'll
we'll
stick to our
stick to the
purview. anyway.
outside.
But yes.
All right, now I'm
No,
going
I
back
was
to
just
the.
curious,
No, it's a
just
good
wanted
question.
to
I'm going
ask
back to the public. Are
because-
there any questions from the public?
Yes, silence.
All right. So you would like it to adjourn?
Yes.
Now, are we adjourning until? Are we adjourning this to go to the planning board now? Council, are we adjourning this to go to the planning board?
Well, we would adjourn it to a specific date, so we would know what the public can know when it can happen here. In the meantime, they may apply to the planning board for the site plan issues, but I think that, the facade issues, they're still looking for input from this board, and this, the signage, the other boards don't have jurisdiction on.
So we can adjourn it. When do you think you can come back with more specificity on your sign plans?
I think it would be good to adjourn for a month.
Okay, a month. So that would be what's the April date?
I believe there's an April 8th meeting.
April. That's right. Okay. Motion to accept applicant's request for an adjournment for 43 Hill Street to April 8th. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to 500 Ox Pasture Road for an accessory greenhouse. Do you have affidavits and are they in order?
Yes, and
Great. Hello?
yeah, I'm pretty sure. Oh, you've got a personal?
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Carl Benacasa, 860 Montauk Highway, Watermill, New York, for the applicant. This evening, we're considering approval for a 672 square foot greenhouse to be located about 700 feet from from Ox Pasture Road at the location 500 Ox Pasture Road in the village. This greenhouse location was chosen for a variety of reasons. First, it was chosen to be, again, in the backyard, about 111 some odd feet from the rear yard property line and 25 feet from the eastern property line to accommodate, one, the existing scenic vistas that benefit this home, which was first built in 1929. Two, to be in proximity to the existing sheds, which will be used to maintain the cultivation within the greenhouse. And three, because of its location and the sunlight it gets at that specific location. Now, zoning requires that the structure not be within 30 feet of the side yard, so we did need to go to the zoning board for a variance. That variance was approved in its current location. The proposed greenhouse,
Thanks for coming after you got your variance.
yeah, some people don't do that.
It's really helpful to us. It could change the whole thing.
So, yeah, we have the variance.
Great.
Okay.
And I don't know if you have a copy of it, but I'm happy to give it to
I
you.
just was reading it.
Okay.
I love,
I
love the
watched the
zoning
zoning board meetings. Okay.
yes.
I don't think you were on it for that one.
What?
I
I
don't think
wasn't.
Susan
I
was on it
wasn't.
for that one.
No.
It was just issued recently.
Last meeting, the meeting
So this is what the greenhouse looks like. It's actually a prefabricated greenhouse, but it was chosen given its similar appearance to other structures at the home. This is the pool house, which again has white features. And I don't know if you're all familiar with the look of the main house. we can certainly provide those pictures if you like them. Interestingly, the closest side yard, again, is the eastern side yard. And this is what, if you're standing on the ground, you would see. It's very well vegetated with some 30-foot high, 20 to 30-foot high tree line there. So really no one will see this. No one from the street, which is 700 feet away, and no one from the side yard, which benefits from this hedgerow. The structure, again, is 672 square feet. It complies with zoning in as far as height goes, as far as bulking goes, as far as rear yard goes. Again, the one distinction was side yard setback, for which we have a variance. There are no outdoor mounted lights for the structure. It is white powder coated aluminum and glass. And again, its intended use is for seedlings and for tropical, sustaining tropical plants in the colder months.
Is there any interior lighting?
There are 2 interior lights. Yep, and I have information on those, which I'm happy to share with council. Just 2 bulbs.
Okay.
What, 2 bulbs
Two bulbs within it. Yep.
that are, how
Who's
bright?
that? The cut sheets.
11 watt, 1,000
Oh,
lumen
okay, okay.
downlit inside.
Okay.
Yep.
How'd you get it?
Oh,
just gave it.
I just handed it to you.
Where is this? I'm sorry, I was reading. I'll take one, thank you.
Okay.
So it's, I personally think that you might have to have a timer on it to go off at midnight for dark skies.
That will not be a problem.
It doesn't matter, that's the rule. Your outside lights are supposed to go off either, right? So it's a light box. I'd like that. How's that?
He said no problem.
Yeah, he's cool.
It's not going to be an
Okay,
issue.
thank you.
Board members.
It's a greenhouse.
It's a greenhouse.
Susan.
I have no objection. I thought it seems fine.
Kathy.
Yep, I agree. Seems fine.
Jane.
I'm fine.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Are there any comments from the public?
Not only does he have the variance, but it's going straight
Ahead of it?
through. But
There were no comments from the public stage?
Is this
Okay.
written decision?
Yes.
Yes, motion to move to written decision to accept the application for a greenhouse constructed at 500 Ox Pasture Road as an accessory greenhouse from drawings dated. What's your drawing date? Somebody have a drawing date?
I put mine away. I hate to be something.
January 26th of 24.
Okay, from drawings dated January 26th of 24. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, that takes us to public hearing non-historic carryovers. The first one is 62 Dale Street. Hello.
My name is Jorge Gomez. I'm here in representation of Jared Pike, who's the client on 62 Dale Street. This is our third appearance, and we're just addressing the last comments that you have.
Can you
Sorry.
pull the microphone close, please? Yeah.
Yeah. I raise the hand. Can I share?
Yeah, Sage is going to share digitally.
Yeah. Oops, sorry. So, the comments that you had last time that I am sharing. Is it working? I'm sorry. is sharing yet. Sorry, it's
Yeah.
all right. So some of the comments you guys had last
Okay.
time that we were here was about the gutters, which now the renderings do show the half-round gutters, and also on the elevations we can see. I'm sorry, I'm going too fast. Which we are gonna have half-round gutters and 3-inch round little pipes. They're gonna be white, just like the siding. You also commented on the flat roof that we had at the main entry, which we have changed to be a shed roof instead.
And it's metal?
It's metal, yeah. Yeah, it is not black though. It's not black metal.
That's good.
Yeah, I actually have I submitted the finish of the metal color, which is dove gray.
Oh, light.
Yeah, it's very light.
I hate metal roofs, but dove gray.
So the so your gutters are half round, 5-inch half round.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
With matching downspouts. Okay.
Yeah, with matching downspouts. So that was one of the comments that you said. Also, you suggested on removing the second fireplace that we had, the chimney. That was removed. As per you.
Phony baloney.
That was like a parapet, more for like plumbing risers
It
and
was,
stuff
it
like
was the
that.
chimney to nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was more for harmony of the
Yeah.
building, but we went with your advice and removed it.
Okay.
And the last comment that I had from you was the front door. That was a solid door. I made it into more traditional door, which is, I'm sorry, right here. So now it has glass. It is a shed roof, so it's a lot more traditional now than what it was before. Yeah. So that's those are all the comments that you had in the last.
Board members, comments.
Well, I didn't ask for the changes, but I do think it's nice.
Thank you.
And it's come a long way. It's very stylish.
Yeah, from the very first time, yeah.
Went a long way since the first application.
Yep.
Design-wise, I'm okay with it. I still question when I look at the floor plan. Do they have? It's 5 bedrooms. Is there 4?
Oh, we did address the extra parking. I did talk to the building inspector, and we added a parking spot.
Oh, good.
So we're good on that. Yeah, we confirm on that.
So now, on the plans you submitted here,
I do have that.
is that, Jorge, is that reflected?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. So we can park 2 cars, one in front of, because you can only book 1 car, right? And then the other 2 cars here, so.
So you can stack.
Well, they wouldn't have to
The 2
stack,
cars.
you go side by side here.
Yeah, and then side
So
by
2
side.
cars there and then
Yeah.
2 stacked.
That's-
Yeah,
Gotcha.
It's 4
Okay.
bedrooms or 5 bedrooms?
5.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's one less.
Seems like an awfully large house for a very small piece of property.
But it's there.
We can't do anything about it. Hello.
If it's in relationship with the other houses. I mean, it's a very,
No, I understand, I'm just saying.
I couldn't
just
agree
saying.
more, but that we need some zoning.
Purview.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Purview.
yeah.
it's
Well-
meeting
well-
all the lot coverage, GFAs and everything.
I'm sure. Okay, fine.
Kathy, I'm sorry. Kathy, did you have a comment? No. Okay. I think the shed roof makes a huge difference. Compared to where we were from the beginning to where you are now, you've come a long way. I think now it's sort of calmed down. It's a nice looking house for its location.
Thank you.
Are there any comments from the public? Okay, so motion to accept the application for 62 Dale Street as per drawings submitted on March 5th, 2024, or dated March 5th, 2024, and submitted on March 5th, actually. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Okay. So that next, flying down now, next is 290 Narrow Lane, Jujex Partners Inc.'s 290 Narrow Lane for driveway gates. Do you have affidavits and are they in order?
Yes, and yeah.
Is there anyone here? Oh, okay, thank you.
What are we looking at? Narrow lane?
Driveway gates.
Can anyone hear me?
Yep.
We can. Hello.
Mark Cirillo, AutoGate Systems.
Hello, Mark Cirillo.
How's everyone?
I think we're good.
I don't have that file. I did not get it.
It was from last week.
Oh, from the week before?
Yeah, let me see. And
I don't have it.
Okay, Mark, are you digitally presenting?
Yes. So what we have,
Can you go ahead and share your screen? We can't see anything yet.
all right. I'm sorry?
We can't see, all we see is your name. We don't see your submission.
Where is screen share on the view tab?
On this, isn't on this bottom? What's he showing us?
I have it up on my desktop, so
Right.
where's,
Well, yeah, on bottom of Zoom, you have to look for share screen, and then you have to select the file, then you have to hit share screen.
Excellent text support.
yep,
Nada.
not yet?
No, sir.
All right. bear with me. Try this.
Okay.
There you go. Well done. Okay. Please take us through it.
All right, but look, I'm gonna get back to our screen so I can see
We can see it, don't go anywhere.
who's in front of me.
We'll just,
Okay, so basically what we have here is, in the file, you'll see photos of the driveway of the existing home with two white Versatex lamp posts on either side of the driveway with column lights on top of those. Those are to be removed. They'll come down and be replaced with 16-inch square, 16 by 16 columns, 84 inches high here that you see in the photograph, and or in our line drawing with 6-foot high gates, plus ground clearance to allow for the driveway. These gates are white aluminum picket style with intermediate half-high pickets above the mid-rail. And that's really about it. The purpose of this gate is it's all about deer control, as you hear every month or twice a month. And this one, so there's no keypad. This is going to be free entry, free exit, pedestrian buttons, radio RF transmitters for the owner's vehicles. And that's it. Now, in one of the photos I submitted, you will see fencing, pool code fencing on the right-hand side of the home where it enters the right side backyard. So this is a takeoff from that. The owner had different ideas when we first began to talk. He wanted something more modern and horizontal and a different color. It was called black. And I said, we're not going to get anywhere. Not with this house, with this board. So reconsider based on what you already have. And he thought about it, and I sent him some drawings and photographs, and he concurred. So here we are.
Okay. And the frontage is more than 150 feet. What's the total size of the lot?
2.45 acres.
Okay. And the height of the columns on the other side?
They are 84 inches to the peak. The gate is 72 plus 4+ inches of ground clearance.
Okay.
The driveway has a very slight pitch. And I want to clear the high side of the curb. I shot that, and I need about 4 to 5 inches of ground clearance to clear that. These gates, when they swing open, they'll be outside the existing Belgian block driveway curb.
Okay. Board members.
Did I lose anyone?
No, we're
No.
we're about to give you a comment.
It looks fine, I'm just curious, it looks like it has a lot of, see-throughness, but what do we call that?
Transparency.
Transparency, thank you.
Sure.
Do you know what the ratio is? Just curious.
Well, those are 1.25 by 1.25 square pickets, spaced at plus or minus 5 inches. It's well in excess of 60% open.
Okay.
Right, I just thought maybe you had already calculated that, and I was curious what the calculation was.
And these are the white aluminum pickets with the snap-on caps on the top?
No. No. So these have machined, made of solid aluminum pyramids that are actually a press fit with a plug weld, and then they're sanded smooth. There's no pressed on cap.
And are they then painted?
The entire gate would be powder coated, satin white finish, what's on the screen on the plan, and the columns are built up of Versatex over a steel support post with the same enamel, satin enamel or low luster enamel paint with lead coated copper cap on each column.
Do we usually request for the transparency, just out of curiosity?
Board members?
Here, so
You can
so
tell,
obvious,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I have no objections. I mean, height-wise, it's so open that that's less of an issue. And I think in as much as you stated, Mark, that it's going to be a low luster satin finish, so it's going to almost appear like wood.
Well, except it looks
No
thin.
What's that?
The rails look thin to me.
I'm trying to, based on our previous interactions, I'm trying to get it as light and as open.
Yep.
No, we appreciate. We
like
we
that.
appreciate the transparency. You're well above 40%,
Great.
which is our requirement. All right. Are there any comments from the public? Nobody's talking to. All right. And I guess motion to accept the application for driveway gates at 290 Narrow Lane based on drawings submitted 1/16/24 for white gates and posts. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Members, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. So that brings us up to public hearing on landmark designation review. One of the things this board has the opportunity to do is landmark structures, and it's charged with doing actually by code, is looking at the structures in the building and designating structures that are important and we feel can have landmark structure because they're important architectural statements that represent the village of Southampton. This is a project that we've undertaken to look at houses that are newer than 50 years old, but and we've brought in consultants to look at the projects that we have in the village and give us some advice. And 5 houses have been recommended as worthy of preservation. And I'm going to turn this over to Alex to take us through the methodology and where we are today.
Sure. Let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, great. Mark, like you noted, back, I believe it was August 28th of last year that this board approved a scope of work to study modernist architecture in the village.
Closer to the mic for me.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Is that better, Sage?
Thank you. So on August 28th, this board approved a scope of work to commission a study to study modern architecture in the village. the board had recognized that this was a style of architecture that had previously not been studied in any kind of comprehensive way in the village. And when our historic districts were originally created in the 1970s, was now 50 years ago. They were looking back, 50 or so years, buildings that were built in the 1920s and the early 20th century. As we know, history and architecture did not stop then, and so we've learned a lot in the last 50 years. So the idea behind this was to look at modernist architecture, of which the village of Southampton, as an example of the East End community, has some really great examples of. So we found an architectural historian and an architect and Professor Kate Oregov of Columbia University, and tasked her with this report. She did a great job working with her research assistant, working closely with the clerks in the building department. We had given her kind of a long list, working with her office to identify about 10 to 15 houses that we felt were examples of modernist architecture, and asked her to narrow down what we thought were about the 5 most exceptional, best examples. So this isn't a comprehensive report of every modernist house in the village. We kind of asked her to focus on really the top tier of the best examples. So she did a great job delving into the archives with the clerks in the building department. A lot of these architects have since passed on. Their papers are now archived, many of them at the Architectural Library, Avery Library at Columbia University, which she has access to. So she was able to get into the architectural archives there and did a lot of research. So we were able to present this report at the beginning of the year. I believe it's dated January 9th, and there's a supplement with some images that's been shared with all the board members. I believe that we presented this to the board at the February 12th meeting, at which point the board accepted the report and scheduled the hearings for tonight. We had posted that report online. We had done a certified and regular mailing to those property owners about the hearing tonight, which brings us to tonight's hearing. So as you noted, there were 5 houses that are recommended in Kate's report. She goes through.
One second.
Sorry, go ahead.
Are we opening these record by property? Okay. So I'm going to motion to open the discussion for 1820 Meadow Lane, which is the Coniston House. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We're gonna do them record by record.
Okay, sure. So there's 5 properties that Kate recommended that she felt met one or more of the board's 6 landmark criteria, and because some of these houses were constructed within the last 50 years, there's another criteria that they be of an exceptional importance, and she addresses all of that in her report. So the first one is 1820 Meadow Lane, also known as the Coniston House, which I believe is the one pictured here on screen. And there was a full report on it that goes into detail of the structure, the history, and the architect and the designer. But I can just summarize the relevant parts here. Let's see. So this was designed by Myron Henry Goldfinger, who passed away last year at age 90. So Kate's report noted that this embodies the distinguishing characteristics of a type, period, or method, or construction design, and is a valuable example of the indigenous materials or craftsmanship, or representative of the work of the designer, architect, or builder. So she notes that this is an excellent example of late modernism as it transitioned to early postmodernism. The New York Times had referred to this style as a monumental modernism. So this home and its elements exhibit some characteristics of modern design seen in its geometric forms. It's representative of his signature aesthetic, which is heavily influenced by his studies with modernist Louis Kahn. And let's see, I'm just going to summarize here. And the other criteria that Kate notes here is that criteria number 6 is met, that this is the work of an architect of significance. It's done by the noted American architect Myron Goldfinger, who primarily practiced residential architecture in the New York State area and internationally. His designs were influenced by Louis Kahn, as I mentioned, and featured sweeping curves, geometric forms, vast blank walls, vistas framed by walls of windows, and an overall sense of monumentality. So he rose to the prominence in the 1980s and 1990s, and his projects gained important exposure through Architectural Digest and Architectural Record, among others. He's a recipient of the Ford Foundation grant and the Bruner Award for the Architectural League of New York. He wrote several books. And Kate notes that his work therefore exemplifies the high standards of designs by a taught master of his design vocabulary. And there's some images here that Kate compiled from various sources. There's some plans here that have come from different architectural studies of the house, as well as some records that have been obtained from the building department archives. And this is showing an oblique view of the house overhead. Let's see if I can make this a little bit larger for us. Let me try and do it like this. And this is a view of the house from the beach. Did the board want to stop for a comment or public comment at this point?
Yes, we're going to go house by
Okay,
house.
sure.
Yes. Okay. Any comments from the board?
My comment is that this meets the requirements by code, based on the research I've done and what Alex has presented to qualify for landmarking.
Okay. Are there any comments from the public? Please, can you please come up to the microphone?
And I'll mention while the public comes up, the board members have received several letters of correspondence.
We've actually, yes, we have. We've received many letters of correspondence and support. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Hello, by
If
Andrew.
you can pull the microphone down.
I am short, so that's a good thing.
They're adjustable.
I happen to be both
I'm sorry,
Myron's.
can you introduce yourself?
Oh, I am June Goldfinger.
Yes.
And I am both Myron's widow and his past partner. And I've known the Connaughton Project since its inception. And it is a remarkable work of Myron's to be able, his focus was very much, he could only design if he saw the site, if he could only be with the site and be part of it. And I think I sent everyone an original photograph
You did,
and
thank
his
you.
statement. And so indigenous to this site is what he created and then recreated again when the needs of the client expanded. And knowing Myron, as I did, working with him, I'm especially proud of this work. I think it enhances the dunes. It is very respectful of its site and is really a wonderful place to live in. I know the building from within as well. And I would think that if the committee and were so inclined to give it a status, that would really be appropriate, and I would be very pleased.
Thank you.
So.
Is there any other public comment?
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you.
But
Thank
before
you for
I'm going to start,
considering this.
see if there are any more comment. But yes, thank you for coming and thank you for your interest. It's, one of the things about doing this job is that one of the things we look at is, things that have impact on the village. And there's, in modern houses, as you went through the report, there's not a lot of them, but some of them are seminal. And quite often, as I've said, setting this up, houses take time sometimes to even understand, and they go through, various understandings of the house. So the ability to take a marvelous work like this and preserve it and honor it is one of the things we enjoy doing as the village. So you are in favor of us landmarking this structure.
Oh, excuse me?
You are in favor of us landmarking this structure.
Oh, of course I am, and I'm extremely honored that you've taken the time and the consideration in so many ways for Myron's work. Thank you so very much, and my family thanks you also. My two daughters, who are very involved with their father, will be very pleased if it is.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you so much for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Please.
Great. Hi, My name's Timothy Godbold. I run a nonprofit in the Hamptons called Hamptons 20th Century Modern. I started the 501c in about 2020. It's really about bringing awareness to modernism that's in the Hamptons. I became involved purely because a lot of these buildings are getting demolished. And with Myron Goldfinger's work, I'm in the design field. I'm on social media a lot. The amount of people that are responding to Myron's work, young people, is incredible. And for me personally, it would be a shame if we didn't acknowledge these types of buildings for their importance, but also for the children of tomorrow. You know, I mean, modernism, postmodernism, it's been out of fashion for a very long time. A lot of people don't find it very attractive. That's okay, but it's extremely important. It's a very important movement, and it's only becoming more and more important as time goes by. So for me personally, I think it's important that we keep these types of buildings. Myron's building, there's about 3 Goldfingers in the Hamptons. 2 of them he kind of disowned because they had work done to them. This is a pure form of a Myron Goldfinger house. I met Myron a month before he passed away, and he talked about this house because that house is done in 2 parts. And the second part, the addition, it's a bit like Godfather 2. It's almost as good as the first one. And together, the synergy of both of those houses together makes an incredible impact. And the other house that he loved is the luxury liner, which is where is the luxury liner? Sam's Point.
Sands Point.
And then, you know, this was called Temple of the Dunes because it was all about Myron. I don't know if you know, but he was heavily influenced by the Mediterranean architecture. So there's a lot of curves. I think every bedroom had a deck, so and a 360-degree view. So it's a pure form of modernist architecture. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Certainly.
Thank you. So my name is Mitchell Algus. Actually, I run a gallery in New York City. And during the pandemic, my wife and I, because we really couldn't go anywhere, so we went somewhere. We got in the car and we drove around photographing a lot of, you know, learning about the architecture in the area. And one of the architects whose work we kept coming across in Sands Point, in Kings Point, out here in the Hamptons, was Myron's. And I started asking around and was sort of surprised that a lot of the academic historians, although they knew of him, they didn't know that much about him. And so, and I realized, so I started posting these things to my gallery's Instagram account. And then I decided I would write an article about our trips looking at all the modernist houses. And realizing that Myron, there was contact information. So I called Myron, and me and my wife spent 5 or 6 days going up, talking to Myron and June. And then June told me that Myron had been diagnosed with cancer. So I called another person who, like Timothy, is really obsessed and runs a website called US Modernist, George Smart. And I said, George, we should do a show. And so George called the New Canaan Historical Society, and New Canaan being sort of ground zero for modernist architecture, he called me back and said, okay, can you do it by October? So we put together a show called Circle, Square, Triangle, the Architecture of Myron Goldfinger, which opened in October and ran through the end of the year in New Canaan. And the show will bring the show to New York, and hopefully there'll be some of the Hamptons focused, hopefully out here sometime, hopefully during the summer. But the Conison House, the article I finally did write, I wrote for Art News. Here, I can pass it around if you want.
That's okay.
I think
we have
You got,
it.
oh,
We
okay,
have
so
it.
you got it. So you know all this. Okay, so, you know, and it's just wonderful. You know, there's so much modernist architecture which is being destroyed. You know the Gordon Bunshaft house in Sagaponack that Martha Stewart bought,
Yes.
and that her neighbor.
I'm going to ask you actually just to stick to this house.
Okay, I'm
Because
sorry.
you know, if we start
Anyway,
going outside
yes.
of our shows, we
I'm
could
just
be here a
talking
while.
about, I guess, Myron.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, it's one of Myron's great houses, and having it, it's just wonderful for it to have the protection that landmarking deserves. Oh, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other comments? Anyone online?
Hello.
Hello. Could you
My
state your...
name is John Field. Yes, my name is John Field. I am an architect in New York City. Myron Goldfinger was my mentor. I participated in the addition to the Conison House with him and fully support its landmarking and the landmark process the board is going through with the other houses.
Thank
This
you.
is a notable piece of architecture, even more notable because of the addition and the change in his style through the addition process.
Thank you. Alex, what have you heard from the homeowner?
I don't believe that we've heard a response from the homeowner.
Okay, here's how I'm feeling. The landmarking a house is a serious step forward, and I think it's important that we give the homeowners in all consideration time. And I think that the notice went out about 10 days ago. So what I'm going to suggest we do on this is keep the record open until the next meeting and vote in the next meeting to allow an additional 2 weeks for any other additional comments to come in before we move forward. It's clearly our intention to want to landmark the house. I just think it's fair to homeowners to take the time to have adequate time to get all information before a final vote is taken. So I'm going to move to adjourn the vote on Conison House at 1820 Meadow Lane and adjourn the decision till March 25th. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much for coming. That people that come out and represent really matters a lot, and it's so nice to have you here. Yes. We're very appreciative of his talent, and we're very appreciative of your presence. So thank you. Yes. It's special, and we can see it, and we appreciate it. Okay, then I'm going to move to open the record for DF Meadow Lane LLC at 1360 Meadow Lane for discussion for the Sugarman House. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alex?
Okay, great. So up on the screen, I have the first image of the Sugarman House at 13 Meadow Lane, I believe shortly after it was...
1360.
Oh, excuse me. 1360 Meadow Lane, shortly after it was constructed. This house was designed by Ward Bennett between 1963 and 1964, making it one of the earlier examples of the buildings tonight. So this Ward Bennett, the report notes, was a multidisciplinary designer from New York City, who worked throughout the 1930s and the 1960s and had a signature style of warm, minimalist modernism that incorporated historic elements and inspiration from his international travel. And in The House Beautiful in the 1960s, described his spaces as chaste. They are never old, understated. They tell the world about craftsmanship. They are evolutionary rather than revolutionary. And I'm just going to skip down here. There's a lengthy history of this particular house in the report, but it noted that it meets three criteria for landmark designation. The first being the first criteria in our code that it exemplifies or possesses a special character or historic aesthetic interest of value as part of the political, economic, social history of Southampton Village. So Kate notes that this home really exemplifies a period in the 1950s and 60s when upper middle class creative types from New York were buying properties in the Hamptons and seeking out designers and architects who could construct modest but exciting residences. And the Sugarman House is part of that influential architectural legacy developed by architects including which calls the New York Five, who designed similar-sized modernist vacation homes all throughout the East End in the 1960s. And this home really helps set the tone for future modernist homes in the village, particularly along Meadow Lane. The next criteria is that embodies the distinguishing characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction or design style, or is a valuable example of the use of indigenous materials or craftsmanship, or is representative of the work of the designer, architect, or builder. So Kate notes that the Sugarman House is a distinctive house in the village that embodies what design critics have called the warm modernism or soft modernism aesthetic of the renowned mid-century designer Ward Bennett. He's known also for furniture and houseware designs, and a home was a somewhat unusual commission in which he was in charge of the exterior, the site planning, the interior design, and together they created this all-encompassing work of art. So there's no other buildings in Southampton Village designed by Bennett, and only a handful of projects where he designed both the exterior and interior, and even fewer of those examples survive. So that makes it very rare. And the Sugarman House has been recognized as the designer's most passionately austere creation. And the last criteria related to that is number 6, is that it's the work of an architect of significance. So Kate notes that while he was not a licensed architect, Ward Bennett was an acclaimed multidisciplinary designer who was widely published and recognized during his lifetime. His projects range in scale from buildings to objects and clothing, and some of his interiors and homes have been some of the least recognized. He's published dozens of works, starting in the 1940s through the early 2000s. His work was showcased in Vogue, the New York Times, Arts and Architecture, and other publications. I believe that there's 2 other homes designed, including his own home in East Hampton in the 1970s, and that's the house in Amagansett, that are also by the same designer. And I'll flip through some of the images here on the screen. I believe this is from a architectural publication. These plans were taken from the building department archives that show the floor plans. These are also some elevation views taken from building department records. And here we have an oblique overhead view of the image from about a year ago, in 2023. And I believe we have an image of as it appears from the beach.
Okay. Board members, any comment on 1380 Meadow Lane?
The same as the one before. It meets the criteria. It's as Alex had pointed out, and I would support its landmarking.
I will go on the record to say what's interesting about this house, certain times houses come up and they change an aesthetic or they change a design idea. When this house was originally built, what is now enclosed glass at the bottom level was actually open. It was built as a flow-through house in anticipation of waters and waves that would go through. And sometimes later, without compromising the house, the bottoms were actually enclosed into additional living space in what was the lower level of the house. But it shows that you can work with these houses because in its seminal style, its seminal location, its seminal use, it just represents a change in materials and how we thought of location and land at its time. Do I have any comments from the public? Hand up. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Alex. Hello to the board.
Hello.
My name is Susan Horowitz, and I'm the Director of Preservation Projects for Hampton's 20th Century Modern. And I wanted to talk about the importance of this house as a reference to important modernist, international modernist architecture. In this case, the Mexican modernist Luis Barragan. And it's wonderful to see the modernist design elements transposed from one culture to our culture and our location. It's something that that Ward Bennett did in his own house that exists and that's in the Springs, which we would certainly hope that house could have a similar positive fate in the future. So what you're doing here in Southampton has ramifications across the Hamptons in the work of these architects. And one of the things we're trying to do is to document the existing works, significant works all across the Hamptons. So we believe that the effort, the fabulous effort that you're making is something that will have a very positive effect across the Hamptons. And we thank you for it.
Thank you. Do I have any other comments? Please, sir.
Just quickly with Ward Bennett. Ward Bennett is sort of a...
I'm sorry, can you just identify yourself
Yeah,
again?
Timothy Godbold from Hampton's 20th Century Modern. Ward Bennett is a designer's designer. He's extremely influential in American design throughout the late 20th century. He was self-taught. He had a very small studio. He has 3 houses on the East End. One of them is on Further Lane.
That's that's currently the Jan.
Yep.
That's Jan
Jane-
Wenner's house.
Jane
Yes.
Yeah, Jane's. And then his property in the Springs, and then his apartment in the where did John Lennon live? The
Dakota.
Dakota. It was published numerous times in the early 70s. Tom Ford just bought it. A very important designer. It's an incredible property. What's fascinating about it is it was built, I think, in around 1968, but it was like the house that I grew up in as a kid in the 80s. I mean, it's timeless. I mean, this house is completely timeless. It's been recently renovated. It was in the New York Times. I will say a lot of these houses in the Hamptons are starting to get a lot of publicity globally throughout the world. A lot of people don't understand the incredible modernist architecture we have here. You know, we all think of LA and Palm Springs and Sarasota and et cetera, but really, this house was, I don't know if you know, was owned by the gentleman who did Captain Kangaroo.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, it's got this incredible history.
And CBS Sports Day. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's an incredible history behind this, and it's been beautifully restored. So that's just a little bit more information.
Great. Thank you.
One more to go.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Like the other houses, I'm going to ask that we adjourn this.
Have we heard from the property owner?
Pardon?
Have we heard from the property
Have we
owner?
heard from the property owner?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe we have. There's nothing in the file. So I'm going to ask that we hold this open till vote on March 25th for motion to hold open the application for to landmark 1360 Meadow Lane until March 25th. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, next up is 380 Barron's Lane. We have a letter from the owner in the file. asking to postpone the record because he wants more time to respond. What I'm going to say is, council, I'm going to read it, have it open and read into the record tonight, but we're not, and then we're going to adjourn it.
Okay.
Okay. So motion to open the record for 380 Barron's Lane, the Cohen House. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alex?
Sure. So this is a 380 Barron's Lane, the Cohen House, designed by Norman Jaffe between 1981 and 1983. So the report has a history of the property and how the home was constructed. One of the features that Kate notes is that, like many Jaffe homes, it has angular forms and a sky roof that dominate the geometry of the building. And it has the lower levels constructed out of granite fieldstone and creates what Jaffe had described as a ponderous masonry base that he saw as clinging to the earth, which contrasted with the lightness of the bridge linking the guest house and the main home, each clad in cedar shingles, creating an energizing effect. So a lot of this area had remained undeveloped into the construction of homes here in the early 1980s. And there's a history of that construction. I'm going to note the significance. So the first criteria that Kate notes here is that it meets the first criteria in the board's code, which is exemplifies or possesses the special character or historic aesthetic interest of value as part of the political, economic, or social history of the village. So it's noted that this is a reflection of one of the last periods of development in Southampton, which took place in the late 1970s and early 1980s as the remaining agricultural fields were subdivided and developed into private family summer homes. So this was previously potato fields, and it was the first home in the immediate vicinity to be developed by a local real estate construction company. It's also a reflection of the shifting types of homeowners for summer residences. Jaffe had said in a letter to architectural critic Paul Goldberger, the clients we built for in the 60s were art directors, photographers, painters, and a few modest professionals. In the 1980s, they're movie stars, garment district moguls, and real estate developers. Different lives, different images of themselves. So these homes of this era were designed and constructed during this period, were larger, more complex, and designed by more well-known architects. The other criteria that's noted here is number 3, that it embodies a distinguishing style, characteristics of a style, period, method of construction or design, or is a valuable example of the use of indigenous materials or craftsmanship, or is representative of the work of a designer, architect, or builder. So this is noted as a prime example of a recreational home completed in a regional modernist style that reflects the changing aesthetics of modernism in the 1960s and 1970s. So during this period, modernism was adapted from a placeless aesthetic of the international style and started to respond more to local building traditions, forms, materials, and siting. And the Cohen House here is one of a handful of homes in the village of Southampton that really showcases that architectural style. So Jaffe's home, design for the home, followed modernist ideals of minimalism, rejection of ornament, and historically inspired elements. However, the design was site-specific, created for its unique oceanfront location. So the architect had noted to Paul Goldberger that from a distance, the slope roof silhouettes of the two buildings attempt to be familiar in the landscape. At close distance, the systems of opening reveals that it is a contemporary home. Primary was the long horizontal expression catching the line of the ocean. It was strengthened by transparent living room where one sees through the structure establishing the horizon. So this home is noted as an excellent example of Jaffe's work with its complex forms, angular roofs, use of natural materials such as cedar shingles, granite fieldstone, and orientation of views towards the landscape. So his play of solid and void particularly is prevalent in this home, where he incorporated skylights, canted windows that reduce glare, and brought in a lot of daylight and views. And the last criteria that's noted in the report is that 6 is the work of an architect of significance. So it's the work of one of the area's most noted architects, and it was one of the few homes that he designed that has not been demolished or altered beyond recognition. And at the time of his untimely death, he had received more than 22 awards for his architecture, designed more than 150 homes, and had been accepted into the elite fellows of the American Institute of Architecture. So, although he designed approximately 60 homes in the Hamptons and the surrounding areas, the designs are increasingly under threat of demolition. They tend to be smaller, and they're often seen as outdated by certain aesthetics. The homes that remained have been altered, some more sensitively than others, but this is noted as having very minimal interventions and is a significant exception to that. So up on the screen, I believe we have an image shortly after its construction where you can still see the potato fields that were prevalent in this area.
Remember those?
This is a view of the property looking north, photographed in 1983 for the architect. And let's see, here we have an image looking towards the pool and the connecting bridge from 1983. These drawings were taken from Columbia University Avery Architectural and Fine Arts Library, I believe from the Norman Jaffe collection. And here we have an image of an overview of the house today from a year ago in about March 2023. And I believe, I think that might be the last image we have for this particular house.
Okay. Board, any comments? Yes.
No. Well,
when we look at the few seminal structures that fit in.
yes. Well, that's what I was going to say. The previous two architects could almost be defined as iconoclasts, in as much as they were introducing stark, different designs into the settings. Norman Jaffe worked, and perhaps that's why he focused so much in the Hamptons and had a reputation. His work fit in to the dunes. He made every design that he did appropriate for the space, and so it's not modern in the terms of concrete and glass, but on the other hand, it's modern in terms of its design and the angles and the geometry, and to me, the way it just flows into the landscape and eventually the seascape is beautiful and deserves recognition and meets the criteria of landmarking.
Okay. Comments from the public?
And while the comments from the public come in, I'll note that we've also received correspondence relating to this property that are in the file and have been shared with the board members.
And that correspondence was from?
I believe it's from various organizations, some of which we've heard from on the other properties, talking about the importance of.
I know we actually have a long list of supportive letters.
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yep.
Great. My name is Tara Cubey. I am the Preservation Director for Preservation Long Island. We are the regional advocate for historic preservation on all of Long Island. We were also responsible for a lot of the surveys that were conducted back in the 1960s and 70s, upon which a lot of the historic landmarks are based in the Hamptons and in other places. And we would also we'd be the first to say that those lists and those surveys are in desperate need of updating to include these treasures of the recent past. And so I'd first like to just applaud these efforts, and that this report that Kate conducted, I hope that it is the starting off point for more surveys like this. We've seen in the past that these buildings, the ones that were constructed in the last 40 to 50 years, are often the ones that are most at risk because they have not had the benefit of time for people to appreciate them. And I would just like to, again, hold up Kate's report and support the listing of this and the other 4 buildings that we've seen tonight as landmarks, because they're undoubtedly rise to the level of exceptional historic structures. And I would just like to again applaud these efforts by
Great, thank you.
Southampton Village. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment?
Hello?
Hello?
Hi. I wanted to.
Please, can you please
bring up a
reintroduce
point.
yourself? Can you please reintroduce
This is
yourself for the
Susan
record?
Susan Horowitz, Director of Preservation Projects for Hampton's 20th Century Modern. This house is a real prime example of creating the architectural continuum on the beach in the Hamptons, which is something that it's almost equivalent to our street theme. In that we're so lucky to have such a collection of architecture that is right on the beach, and it is a public beach, and people can take long walks. And this house is just beautifully sited for stopping and observing a really important piece of architecture, because it is very, very close to the beach line, of course, depending on what's going on with our climactic situations on the beach. But it's a particularly beautiful sighting. So I wanted to raise that comment, which also relates to quite a few of our other houses in this designation plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Any other comments? Okay. Motion to adjourn the discussion for 380 Barron's Lane to March 25th for landmark status. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion to open the record for 1880 Meadow Lane, the Roslyn House. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alex.
Sure. If you give me one moment, I'll pull that up. Okay, so this is the Roslyn House at 1880 Meadow Lane, also designed by architect Norman Jaffe between 1989 and 1991. So this was designed...
Alex, I'm going to ask you to pull the mic towards you again.
Sorry about that. So this is noted as being designed for Melvin Roslin, and completed in 1991 on a 3.5 acre lot. This is a uniquely sited, as it's a 45-degree angle away from the beach, and due to its placement at the crest of the dune, it was one of the only possible locations for the home, given the setbacks of this unique site. So the home is noted as rectangular in form, with perimeter columns around all four sides that extend beyond the second floor. And as he noted in his application, the intensity of the light at the site is revealed through light-catching devices and interior and exterior details. The report notes that the overall appearance of the home is reminiscent of a classical Greek temple, which is rectangular and symmetrical, with its windowed pediment. And a lot of the small details emphasize this, including fluting at the top of the columns, suggestive of capital columns, a brise soleil, which from certain angles represents oversized dental molding, and the glazed barrel vaults suggests translucent pediment. So its siting, too, on top of the dunes is reminiscent of the raised position of the Parthenon at the Acropolis. And Jaffe had noted this in a letter to architecture critic Alistair Gordon, that Southampton and the Aegean are on the same latitude, so as that was part of the inspiration for this house. So in contrast with the symmetry of the home exterior, the landscaping and terraced hardscapes are asymmetrical and sit predominantly to the west of the building. So there's a history that's summarized in the report that summarizes the application of the house and the conditions that it was built under. And I'm just skipping down here. So under the architect and designer background, it refers to the section on Norman Jaffe that I won't repeat. And under the significance, it's noted that it meets criteria number 3, which is that embodies the distinguishing characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction or design style, is a valuable example of the use of indigenous materials or craftsmanship, or is representative of the work of a designer, architect, or builder. So this is noted as an excellent example of postmodern architecture and an unusual example in this style in Southampton and on the East End. This style emerged in the 1970s and 80s, was a reaction to the uniformity and placelessness of modernism and the international style. So this postmodern architecture embraced the revival of classical architectural forms and elements, particularly decorative ones, but combined them with contemporary architectural aesthetics and played with color and proportion to create new modes of expression. So this was an example of postmodern architecture. It's unusual for Southampton, especially along Meadow Lane, where you had a lot of neo-shingle and traditional symmetrical homes. It's also an excellent example of Jaffe's work later in his career, just a few years before his death. And it lacked many of the features of his homes in the 1970s and 80s, particularly the angular forms and cedar-clad exteriors we see in other Jaffe homes. But it's undoubtedly one that Jaffe was proud of and he felt reflected his abilities. He selected it as one of his 8 properties featured in his portfolio for work submitted to his fellowship to the American Institute of Architects. So while it's unusual compared to his earlier work, architectural critic and the author of his biography contextualized it as one could dismiss it in favor of his early work, but Jaffe's drift into excess can be seen as part of the general shift in American modernism. And then it also is noted as meeting criteria number 6 as being the work of an architect of significance. It's it's a work of one of the area's most notable architects, and is one of the few homes he designs that has not been either demolished or altered significantly. At the time of his death, as we noted before, he had received many awards for his architecture, designed many homes, and been accepted into the Fellows of the American Institute of Architecture. So this again is noted along with some of the other houses here as having really minimal intervention and being an exception to some of the changes that have happened to some of the other Jaffe homes. And I can scroll through some of the images that are included in the report. This one is a view from the street circa 1991. This is a site plan from the Columbia University Avery Architectural and Fine Arts Library from the Jaffe Archives. This is also from his archives at Avery Library that show a sketch of the house. And these are the elevation from the house from his collection. This is a view from the book Romantic Modernist. And here we have, this is the oblique view from March of last year. As well as, I believe we have a current image as visible from the beach.
Okay. What I will say about this house, besides meeting the criteria, is if you look at an architect's body of work, this is a complete departure of his own body of work. This is about the last house it may have been the last house he built, and it was completed about 3 years before his death. And it's a complete reaction to postmodernism and a complete departure of some of the other houses he was known for, which makes it significant. It's also significant, this particular piece of property is about a 3.5 acre piece of property of only about an acre's worth was actually buildable. And the siding and foundation plan and location of this house is very determined by pre-existing condition, which he took into consideration, which is documented in some of the reporting that's done on the house. Anyone else have any comments? Anything from the public? Sir?
Hi, Timothy Godbold. Quickly just reiterate what you just said. What's amazing about this Norman Jaffe is that it's completely different to anything he really ever did. And for me, it really shows the arc of the architect's journey through architecture. as it is so unlike his earlier work. And a lot of people don't like this house. And in a sense, I think that's really important, that we see everything of what he has completed. And it's it's complete postmodernism, and or POMO, as we like to call it. And, POMO is coming back. I mean, there's a lot of people who are looking at this period of architecture for inspiration. Everybody I speak to, it's all about postmodernism, and it was vilified. I mean, if you ever want to get a conversation going about architecture, just mention postmodernism, and you will get vitriol reactions from people because it was so loathed by so many people. But it's fascinating that Norman Jaffe created this building. It's just, as much as I don't particularly love it, but I think it's super important that we keep it. So thank you.
Thank you. Sometimes I think one of the things about seminal works, because architecture goes through a lot of consideration through a short period of time, and sometimes it has to be around long enough to be appreciated. Like people didn't like the Pompidou when they built it, but now it's a highly respected building. But sometimes things take time to understand their impact on the surroundings. Do we have any communication from the homeowner?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe we do. Not that I've seen. Okay, so I'm going to motion to hold open the record for 1880 Meadow Lane for consideration until March 25th. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Which brings us to 88 Meadow Lane, the Bliss House. Motion to open the record for the Bliss House, 88 Meadow Lane. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. John, would you prefer that we read all this into the record and then you'll respond?
Yeah, let's go through the same format.
Okay. Alex?
Yeah, just give me one moment. I'll pull that up. All right, I'll start with this image while I pull up the history of the house. So the report notes that this is the Bliss House at 88 Meadow Lane, designed by Norman Jaffe between 1978 and 1979. So it's located on Meadow Lane between Cooper's Neck and First Neck Lane. And it's noted that it's a dynamic two-story residence clad in cedar shingles defined by dramatic, steeply sloping triangular roofs. It's angular and asymmetric in form. And the house's current floor plan consists of two large obtuse triangles and a smaller third. Their acute angles play out from a central location, almost like an irregular pinwheel. The home's dynamic form and floor plan mean that it appears distinct from every angle and that no two views are alike. In elevation, one of the two larger triangles is steeply sloped away from the street, as if it emerged from the dunes. The other large triangle is partially intersected by a wide, massive stone chimney that protrudes above its roof ridge. The elevation that faces the ocean features two levels of glazing, enabling views covered by an angled shingle roof, and this contrasts with the elevation to the street, which consists primarily of a solid wall at the lowest level and a large, steeply sloped roof interrupted on the east side by an open void that creates a terrace or patio on the second floor. And there's also a low one-story rectangular wing that functions as a garage. So there's a building history that's noted in the report that details the history of the property and the site and how the home came into being. And let's see. I'll note that this was designed by Norman Coleman Jaffe, as we discussed before. He's a renowned modernist architect for his residential designs, both urban and residential complexes and single-family homes. He had been trained at the University of Illinois and University of California at Berkeley, and in 1961 moved to Manhattan to work at Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, and later for Philip Johnson, before settling in Bridgehampton to establish his architecture practice there in 1964. So he stood out with his home design in the Hamptons in the 1970s, when the area was considered a competitive proving ground for architects and designers. He was a die-hard modernist architect who adopted an experimental approach, steering away from the frequently replicated shingle-style homes. So the landscapes of eastern Long Island deeply resonated with Jaffe, inspiring him to seek powerful architectural form that could respond to the natural terrain in the site, and this often manifested itself in his designs. So as I've noted before, his significant contributions to architecture were recognized in 1991, where he was inducted as a fellow into the American Institute of Architects. And he was praised as a designer of country houses which are uncompromising of our time, yet settle within their landscapes as if they had been there for decades. And he became one of the most prolific architects in the area, designing more than 60 local houses. And his signature single home style gained international recognition in design magazines and architecture exhibitions in the 1970s up until his untimely death in 1993. So I'll note here that the report notes that it is this property is of exceptional importance for modern architecture. It's a prime example of a recreational home completed in a regional modernist style, and is an excellent example of Norman Jaffe's dynamic architectural style. So it's noted here that it meets criteria number 1, that it possesses the special character or historic aesthetic of value as part of the political, economic, or social history of the village. So it's noted that it's a reflection of the changing architectural taste in the village, which was more conservative and traditional throughout the mid-20th century, but since has evolved and become increasingly accepting of modern and contemporary style homes, including those especially in this waterfront area. The home harkens back to the trailblazing residence that architect Charles Gwathmey designed for his parents in Amagansett in 1965, which at the time had scandalized the neighbors for aesthetics, but also revolutionized a whole generation's idea about what a house should look like. The implementation of landscaping is reflective of the changing opinions and aesthetics in this time. The report notes at the time of its construction, it was considered somewhat radical because of its sharp contrast to other homes in the area, which were more classically inspired. So it represents more of an aesthetic shift in the village to a contemporary aesthetic and preferences for summer homes that influenced others in the area. The other criteria that's noted here is that number 3, that embodies the distinguishing characteristics of a type, period, or method, or construction or design style, or is a valuable example of the use of indigenous materials or craftsmanship, or representative of the work of designer or builder. So Kate notes here in the report that this is an excellent example of a recreational house designed in a regional modernist style, reflecting the changing aesthetics of modernism in the 1960s and 70s. And modernism was adapting from a aesthetic of the international style and starting to respond to local building traditions, form, materials, and siting. And it's one of the only homes in the village that showcases this architectural style. So his design for this home followed the modernist ideals about minimalism, rejection of ornament, and classically inspired design elements. However, it was very site-specific, created for this oceanfront location. Jaffe had stated to the New York Times his intention was to create something that was appropriate to the seascape and conform to the site in a way that traditional symmetrical homes could not. The home's angular roofs followed rise and valleys of the dunes, and its weather-worn exterior cedar cladding linked the home to the centuries-old tradition of using wood cladding on homes in this area. The home is oriented in a way that takes advantage of the views of the water, with glazing on the lower level and first floor where they face the ocean. It's also an excellent example of Jaffe's work with key typical features of his projects, including sky roofs, which are soaring angular roofs stretching to the sky, complex geometry, sculptural forms, exteriors clad in cedar shingles that age with exposure to the wind and sea, and the use of other natural materials like fieldstone. Architecture record noted that Jaffe homes nearly always respond sympathetically to their sites. They almost always celebrate a sense of a shelter that finds expression in the powerful forms, with deep overhanging eaves, sometimes reaching down to grade. So with its dramatic roof, inspired by the shapes of the dunes and its orientation to the water, this is very consistent with that description. And finally, it's noted that it meets criteria number 6, that it is the work of an architect of significance. As we've noted before, Jaffe is one of the area's most notable architects. And this is, again, one of the examples of the few homes that he's designed that has not been demolished or altered beyond recognition. I've noted here about his various awards and recognitions in the architectural community. And so this is noted as a significant exception to some of his works that have been lost in the area. And in the attachment here, this is an image from the original building permit from our archives. I skipped over some images that just showed the site pre-construction, but focusing on the house. These are some of his drawings from his records and papers that are now stored in Columbia University. This is showing the elevation of the house from the building permit records. And here you can see different elevations. These plans are showing the different levels of the house and floor plan view. These are also taken from the building department archives. And then here you have an oblique view of the image from March of last year, showing the property looking north. And then finally here you have an image showing the property looking north from the beach.
Okay. One thing I find interesting about this house is it was considered so radical at the time that this board required that it be hidden from the street. When we talk about how relevance of modern houses age over time, and it's now something we want to celebrate, but its actual time, it was considered so radical they wanted to hide it from the street. And now we've completely changed our opinion on what we think about this house and modern houses. But board members.
As we've heard before, I think we can safely say that there's no doubt that Norman Jaffe is an architect of renown and international reputation. On that basis alone, this house deserves landmarking. But as Alex stated, there are other criteria that have been met to do the same. What I find particularly interesting about this house among his works is that, in my view, and somebody might comment otherwise, but this to me is the quintessential Jaffe house, in part because of the holistic nature that he took in designing the house. Yes, his attention and devotion to building the house within its setting, its in this case on the dunes, but also recognizing some of the traditional aspects in terms of the materials he used. So to me, this embodies Jaffe and deserves landmarking.
The one thing I would notice, I believe this is the first Jaffe commissioned house in Southampton. Jaffe houses seem to go down one of two ways. Many were commissioned houses that were done specifically for owners, and some were done as more spec houses. And there was a sharp difference in the time and materials used between those two construction methods. As the first commissioned house, this is a house that also led to Jaffe's appreciation and work that expanded into Southampton as a result of this house, which I think is also important to it. Okay, do we have comments from the public?
My name is John Bennett Reed, 212 Windmill Lane, Southampton, New York. And with me is Bailey Larkin, who's another lawyer at the firm. Bailey's going to hand out the Civic Visions report that you should be well aware of because this was the last time you tried to landmark this house. This procedure, which I object to and which I think is in contempt of an existing order of the Supreme Court, should not proceed. It stands on a totally different grounds than the other four matters that you've heard. The client applied some time ago for a certificate of appropriateness from this board, which would have allowed this house to be demolished, a house which has been significantly altered and stepped on. It's not a pure original house, far from it. You denied that request, and in doing so, you specifically applied the criteria for landmarking. There's no escaping what you did in your order, or rather in your decision. I'll talk about the order later. So our client appealed that determination to the Supreme Court, Suffolk County, and they overturned, Justice Marteliski overturned that, your denial by a March 1st, 2023 order in extremely strong language. He was very, very, very critical of the board and the board's refusal to recognize some very salient matters. But one of the things that Judge Monaluski found was that the house had been substantially revised from the original. You're stuck with that until the appellate division, when I don't think they're going to, until the appellate division looks at it and maybe says something different, but I don't think they're going to. But that's what the language that you're stuck with. That's the law of the case, and your attempt. You don't get a do-over on this. Let me give you the benefit of my not only my understanding but my awareness of law on these matters. The law of not only New York, and I've given you case law in my March 6, 2024 letter, but the law, the English common law generally has certain issue preclusion concepts. The most common of them are called res judicata and collateral estoppel, and what that means is the matter has been adjudged. So the Supreme Court, Suffolk County, said that you erred. It said, made findings, not only legal findings, but factual findings, and that is the law of the case. CPLR section 5519 says, for some strange reason, but nevertheless this is what it says, and we're stuck with it, says that if a municipality appeals a decision of a judge, the declaratory provisions of that judgment or order are stayed pending your appeal. So I can't demand, by mandamus or otherwise, that the building inspector issue a demolition permit on this until such time as the appellate division affirms the order of Judge Monaluski. What is left alone, however, is the sequela, as it were, of the decision. That's the underlying decision. And let me read from you, and this is very important, and I'm giving you the benefit of being a trial lawyer and appellate lawyer and having dealt with this on many, many issues, but you don't have to believe me. All you have to do is read the case law that I submitted for you. CPLR 5519, and here we're dealing with what the effect of the stay is when a municipality files a notice of appeal, does not by its terms speak to the vacatur of the order. The order doesn't go away, but rather stays its enforcement to hold that the effect of the automatic stay provisions would vacate the order and treat it as a nullity instead of suspending it. Its effect would lead to pernicious results. This is what happened in this case. The City of New York, their Housing Bureau, brought some claims against a property owner, a landlord, and the city lost. And the city filed a notice of appeal. And not waiting for the outcome of the appeal, which is the only remedy that you are left with under the civil practice law and rules in the case law of the state of New York, not only the case law of the state of New York, but English common law for years. The only remedy that you're left with is the appeal. Now, since you're a municipality, the appeal 5519 of the CPLR protects you during the appeal. Most people would have to post a bond, but you're a municipality, so you don't have to do that. But it doesn't vacate the order, which means that you can't do anything in violation of that order. I can't force you to have the building inspector, I can't force the building inspector to issue the demolition permit during the pendency of the appeal. But you can't do anything that's contrary to that order. You don't get a do-over. This is a do-over that you're attempting. And you can try to wiggle your way out of the fact that anything other than the very basic fact that this is the same issue you have before you. It's the same parties. Now, Alice, in response to my letter, cited a case called, let me find it. It's right on the back. Give me 2 seconds, because, pardon me, I was so very appalled that what you're trying is a do-over here. Excuse me, I'm a little bit tired. I had to get up early and catch an early flight back from Florida. I quite literally was shocked that you're proceeding in a way that's in contempt of Justice Monaluski's order. But Alice cited a case in her response to my order, Sherman Topping versus New York Liquor Authority. And in that case, the court laid out the rule that, collateral estoppel, in effect, prevent relitigating something. And, if there's an appeal, that's fine. And that will stop the declaratory portions of the order, but the order doesn't go away, which means it binds you in subsequent matters, which is what you're doing here. And in that case, there was an SLA proceeding and a nuisance proceeding that the city brought. And after the city's matter was determined, the city had brought the SLA in, as the judge said, just as a nominal party. And then so the city was basing their claim on a nuisance provision. The SLA then brought a separate proceeding on a totally different criteria, totally different party, totally different agency, not the same identity of parties, not the same identity of facts. And the court said, well, res judicata doesn't apply because the SLA wasn't really litigating and really involved in, other than that, just a nominal or named party in the lower court's nuisance proceeding. So what you're doing here now is in breach of hundreds of years of English common law and New York statutory law. You don't get a do-over if you don't like the fact that it's not funny. If you don't like the fact that the judge reversed your order, you have one remedy, which you've taken. You go to the appellate division. You don't go in and start the same damn process again, because that is in contempt of the judge's order. And as the lower court said in the case that I cited, one of the two cases that I've cited, the stay merely holds the parties to the status quo pending the appeal. It prohibits either side, absent appellate action. However, and then the court went on to say, and said, the violation of the original order may be a predicate for a malicious prosecution, contempt, or other actions. What does that mean? That means any movement that you have now, other than waiting for the appeal of your order, is contumacious of Judge Modelewski's order. And there's no question that you have the identity of the parties, the ARB, and the owner of the house. So I would ask you to take another look at this. I would ask you to research it further, and I'm confident that you'll come to the same conclusion, which is your remedy is to wait for the appeal. You don't get a do-over. This isn't like, okay, we lost, so we're going to go and try it again. If you lost, you've lost, and then you have a remedy. You have an appeal. That's what you're left with. And I put Susan and George's discussion in the record. I'm going to ask you to adjourn this to the 25th, I think you have, of March.
Yes.
But I may ask you at that time for another adjournment because I believe Susan and George, I was away. They're in Europe right now. They're obviously, I'm going to ask them to come in and respond as well. I haven't had the opportunity to speak to the client other than tell me that he has received no notice. And then we went into the village records, and the village record, again, shockingly, I mean, I have to do this all the time. You do not see a green card with the post office stamp on it. When I mail these, as I do all the time, when I mail these certified return receipts, I go into the post office, they stamp it. There's no stamped copy of anything that the village purportedly did. I've spoken to my client. My client hasn't received anything. So there's no evidence. There's no evidence that the proper procedure was filed here. So what I'd like you to do is adjourn it as you adjourned the other matters. I'll probably ask you. I'm actually
going to keep it open for public comment.
Okay. Yeah. Of course. But thank you. But I'll probably ask you again because I said Susan and George, who are my experts, are in Europe. But I will put you on notice that prior to that time, in all likelihood, I'll be in Supreme Court asking the judge to either stay or have some sort of penalty from the word proceeding on this matter.
Thank you.
Jeff, if you were laughing nervously, my apology.
No, I was just acknowledging.
I find nothing funny.
I was just acknowledging counsel's presence.
Excuse me?
I was just acknowledging counsel's presence. Don't read anything into my facial expressions.
Okay, do we have any other public comments?
One last thing, if I may. One of the things that if you look at the report, I keep on using the word stepped on because it's I mean, I have my own, I have to share this with you. I almost had to take some Dramamine because of all the purple prose that I heard in these reports, how Jaffe lovingly chose the sites. One of the things that I get to experience in practicing law out here is a lot of back and forth with architects, engineers, builders, and the like. There was a very significant current architect who worked with Jaffe for many years. He tells the story of Jaffe. I'll use names. I'm not going to use any names. Jaffe being told that the Smiths were outside. Oh my God, the Smiths were outside. I was supposed to have something done for them. Hold them off for a half an hour. So the Roberts plans come out. One of those electric erasers.
John, how is this relevant to this house?
This is very appropriate.
Okay, I need to know how it's relevant to this house.
No,
Go ahead.
No, it's extremely relevant.
Okay.
Because all this folderol about Norman citing everything specifically to the piece of property, the eraser came out, and the plans that were designed for another piece of property were put in front of the clients who'd been held in the waiting room for a half an hour. And Jaffe, who was a great salesman as well as a great architect, walked them in and said, you know, it took a lot of time to get this thing done. We really took a hard look at the site and cited it to the property.
Okay. In all honesty, this is a little on the hearsay side, but okay.
It's not on the hearsay side.
Well, okay, I'm not relevant.
First of all, you're not a court of law, so
you're right. So, if
Okay.
you have anything else relevant to say to the house, we hear you, and we're going to adjourn.
And the other thing I think that undercuts this report entirely, and I'm not, in all fairness to the owner, I'm not going to name the property, but you've got all these houses up here of varying qualities, and one of the things that you didn't look at is probably the preeminent non-traditional house in the estate area of the village of Southampton, which is sitting there in plain view for everybody to look at, it really undercuts it shows the lack of thoroughness of this report, and it also shows what happens when you bring in people who are not truly aware of the local.
All right, I hear it. Thank you. Let me get the rest of the public comments. Anybody else?
And while we wait for that, I'll note that there are letters in the file
There are
for this that
many
have been
letters
distributed to the board as well.
Kelly Klein's was actually my favorite, but yeah.
Excuse me?
Nothing. Someone else coming in? All right, so I'm going to motion to adjourn the discussion for 88 Meadow Lane to March 25th. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There you go. All right, so I think that's the last thing on our agenda, so I'm going to motion to close the March 11th meeting of the Southampton Board of Architecture, Review, and Historic Preservation. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.